Hello there, friends. Hello, and welcome to the Open Q&A. Although my Discord folks, they piped up with some great questions. So we've actually got a whole bunch of questions already. But if you're watching live, you'll be able to submit questions as well. Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Hot Dragon, Season 3, good old Ice and Fire. And even if you want to rip on the Game of Thrones show for like 2 minutes, we'll do that. But mostly, yes, Open Q&A. Definitely lots to talk about. Haven't done one of these in a while. So we're bringing it back to you, back to the people. And speaking of the people, thank you, Patreons. That was $10 and up patrons whose names you just saw. Without whom this wouldn't, be possible. And all that sort of thing. Hello, Sean. Thank you for joining me on late notice.
Yeah, no problem. I see the $10 cutoff has edged me out of your Patreon.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to edge you, Sean.
Did you?
It's going to be that kind of stream. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Yeah, so it's just one of those things where the names would get really small if I yeah. So, and I need to go over all the different tiers, but all I wanted to say was thank you. There has been a lot of new patrons lately, and we've had a lot of people signing up for our free Patreon level, which is awesome because you get an invite to the Discord that way. And then, we're in touch, baby. It's if YouTube cancels my channel, I can send you a little message and put up a video on Patreon that you could see. I mean, not that YouTube's about to do that, but you never know. Wild world out there, censorship, Palantir, Bloodraven's always watching, always listening, so.
That's when you read Lord of the Rings and take the absolute wrong message from it.
Yes. Yeah. Sauron Inc. Let's not trust them. Oh, wait, no. Yeah, so, yes, there is a free Patreon level. And like I said, that's because the Discord isn't really meant to be gate kept. It's just, or unnecessarily so. It's just meant to be a nice little corner of the old internet, where people talk about their interests and not try to flame each other out. It's welcome to all. It is a benefit for channel member squishers and Patreons. But like I said, if you don't have... no, say it that way. If you're, a lot of people are tight. If you don't have something to throw at me monetarily, you are still welcome in the Discord. That's what I'm trying to say. So, we've got some questions. Sean, I thought we would start off with a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms stuff. But before we do that, let's ask you a question, which is, what are you working on? Because you're working on something. Always.
Yeah, I'm still kind of working on the 4 things at the same time, although one is basically done here, and I'm going to be releasing it on Wednesday. I'm going to try the YouTube live release here, and we're going to get some people from my Patreon Discord and just kind of hang out as it premieres.
What time?
Kind of like a live stream. It's going to be 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, because I'm going to release the King Arthur video that I haven't come up with a catchy name for yet, but it's basically just explaining why there is no canon and why King Arthur lore is so confusing and inconsistent.
And then I will just, before we get into the rest of the questions, we'll all look forward to that. I'll drop by for the premiere for sure. I need the chat to tell me what interesting thing should I plug into this random plug that's on this wall. I swapped my studio rooms. I still have the same setup, but there's more room for me to walk around. And now I have this plug. It's meant to be a TV plug. So it can't be a TV, it could be a nightlight, obviously. But yeah, I want to think of something weird and cool that I could plug in there. Yeah, the Planky Town's right there. It's all here. It's all here. Neon sign of George Martin. Oh, that's pretty good, Tommy, if then.
Glade plugin with dragon wings.
That would be functional as well as stylish.
I don't know why. It feels weird and wrong to have a Glade plugin that high, but is there? I don't know that there's any law against it.
I can get a comet neon sign. That's great. That's a great idea. It's where comets go. They're up in the sky. You can get custom little neon signs too, can't you?
Yeah, yeah, you can have them made.
Praise Garth. Oh, by the way, yes, if you want a Green Seer t-shirt, those are available at the link below. We're gonna have some new t-shirts coming out this week, by the way. The Bloodraven always watching. Bloodraven is watching you, 1984 style. That's coming. Maybe some other ones. The Patreon tier names. Basically, some of the Patreon tier names are named after the places that you might want to live in Ice and Fire. So, like the magical places that were actually halfway decent, like Sarnor. You know, up until the Dothraki, wiped them out, that was a good place to live for many thousands of years. So, Coors Light Silver Bullet neon sign in my attic. I can have it if I want. I'll think about that. That is tempting.
Get in on the ground floor of that.
So, like I said, I've got some Night of the Seven Kingdoms questions to start off with. And we've had some casting news. We'll get to that too. So, first one, why is Dunk not Coldhands? Essentially, is the question here. If Dunk survives Summerhall, which Peter Claffey suggested that he did, I still am not ready to call that 100% canon. I think there's a little bit of room for some miscommunication there, but let's assume that Dunk did survive Summerhall, what do we think happened to him? Well, I would have made a video about this, except for Michael talks about stuff, beat me to it, which he often does. I was going to break down the joust too. And instead, I just messaged Michael and was like, hey, dude, I saw your video has 100,000 views in 5 hours. Nice job. Way to go. So Michael's out there killing it. And he went through the process and basically said, probably Tarth. The fact that the shield is hanging in the shield hall in Tarth, there's other ways that could happen, but it would kind of make the obvious story is that that's where he retired.
It also just makes a whole lot of sense with kind of the way that they've painted Dunk symbolically. His whole stretch in the beginning is he's got this falling star with his like little tower tree, and he's playing a Dane, so he's doing a lot of Dawn stuff. So to go to Tarth, where everything is themed, Morning Star, Even Star, they've got Morn on one side and Evenfall Hall on the other side, and it's all just it would fit into the idiom that they've placed Dunk in very well.
So somebody pointed this out in the comments a couple weeks ago. I've been thinking about Brienne and Dunk for so many years. It never occurred to me that Dunk's shield literally is Evenfall and Evenstar. Like, it's a falling star and it's a sunset field. So it really is a symbolic match to all the symbolism of Tarth, which is pretty cool. I never really kind of put that together, even though it seems obvious.
Well, in the story of it, it's like the story of Starfall. So, like, he sees the falling star, you think Starfall, and he's the only one who sees it. And so the luck belongs to him, in kind of the same way that they've mythologized the Danes following a fallen star so that it's only theirs, where they build their castle. He builds his little pavilion where the star falls. Sure. So it's very on the nose. And
yeah, it makes me think that there probably is a Weirwood in Starfall. I know Elio Garcia and Linda, they commissioned that artwork of Ned giving Dawn back to Ashara Dane, and it's got a Weirwood in the background. And it's by somebody who's done calendar art, but it isn't calendar art. So I don't think it's canon, but like I would think there would be. So because Starfall isn't really the desert, so I'm guessing it does. But getting back to Dunk, basically, I don't think that he is anywhere super duper conspicuous. I think that if he's surviving Summerhall, he's really traumatized. Like, why didn't he go back to his post? Let's start with that. Like, if he survived somehow, but then didn't appear so that anyone saw him, like maybe he was badly burned and some woods witch saved him in the woods and he wakes up 2 weeks later, but for some reason he decides not to go back to King's Landing and resume his position, but instead retires somewhere with some sort of personal connection, whether it's Rohan Weber's secret cottage that she's been at for 20 years by that point, or Starfall or something like that. I just think that the story note will be like a quiet retirement, not, and then he became Coldhands, you know.
Right.
And he's not Coldhands for other reasons, but I'm just talking about the story beat of it. Go ahead.
Well, and if you want a thematic connection here, you've long maintained that the Cleganes are Dunklings, but whether or not they are Dunklings or not, there are a lot of symbolic parallels between Sandor Clegane and Dunk, and it would make a lot of sense for him to end up on Tarth in the same way that Sandor ended up on the Quiet Isle, crippled. He's got his face burned. Dunk could have his face burned. He could be crippled in some way, you know, having given up a foot for, you know, just like he said he would, you know, for the realm. Like, is there a time when the realm might need my foot more than it would need a prince or something like that? And so, you know, him missing a foot, limping around Tarth would be a lot like Sandor also burned, limping around the Quiet Isle.
Okay, so I was going to say Michael definitely mentioned that in his video, the comparison to Sandor, which you know I love because Sandor's very name potentially foreshadows Dunk holding the sand door of the sand trap above the wildfire at Summerhall. Check out my Summerhall video. But the idea that he actually ended up losing his hand or foot in Summerhall, that would be almost too ironic. That would be a cruel twist. Hopefully, let's say not. But he's surely going to be burned or in. I mean, George disfigures everybody, so there's no question he's not walking out of there 100%.
May not be walking out of there.
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not.
Real quick. Another kind of ironic twist for Sandor's name is that, you know, in French, San, S-A-N-S, it means without. So when George uses that root a lot. So without doors, he could basically just be Dunk, who never had a door to hold. You know, he's
men without hats, because we didn't have a hat to block out the sun.
He's the version of He's the version of Dunk that did not, you know, have a door to hold. But also
men without doors.
Well, and door is for dormir, which is it's the French verb to sleep. So he's like a non-sleeper, you know, like a non-green dreamer.
Sans door. Yeah, I like that. Sans door. That's cool. No doors here. We've no doors. No shrubberies. And then, okay, so just real quickly, Coldhands. This, I feel very strongly about this. You guys tell me what you think. But for me, the reason why he cannot be Coldhands is because we saw Coldhands described from two different POVs, Sam Tarly and Bran. And when Bran sees him, he's also with other people that can comment about him, which they do. And they describe him, his hands, the elk, scarf, the voice. They're hanging out with him, and he's never tall. He vaults on and off the elk. He fights with his sword. He does lots of stuff. Nobody ever calls him tall. And as an author, I just don't think you can hide a 7-foot character by just not mentioning that he's super duper tall and having no one ever comment on it. Like, that just, it doesn't make any sense.
It's the first thing anybody notices when they see a 7-footer. You know,
it kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, if he was 6'2", you know, Bran is a kid, whatever, you can maybe look past it and be like, oh yeah, he just looks like adult height to Bran. But he's 7 foot. He's cartoonishly large.
The children removed his shin bones like Cotton from King of the Hill.
My God. But
hey, what's up, Grey Waste Tim? How you doing there, buddy?
Oh God.
Yeah, 6'4" is gigantic. Like,
yeah.
You see how tall Dunk looks on set. He's 6'6", the actor, Peter Claffey.
Right. In the medieval era, everything is, you know, nutrition is harder to come by. You're basically only finding good nutrition in the lords. So you're not seeing a ton of super tall people. But also another thing is that I mean, you've long thought this, and I agree. Coldhands is a skin changer at the very least, maybe a green seer.
And he seems to be speaking the old tongue, which Dunk doesn't know.
He's not Coldhands. There are a million reasons. We've kind of seized on the most, glaringly obvious, but he's not Coldhands.
The compelling story thread there is it's like, oh, another tie to Bloodraven. Bloodraven has been present in Dunk's story from the beginning, so that part of it could make sense. Like, oh, he's serving Bloodraven at the end of his. Isn't that ironic? But yeah, you can't hide a 7-foot character by just having nobody mention that he's 7 feet tall. That doesn't work. And he also was never a Night's Watchman. I don't know why we didn't mention that either, but like Coldhands is a Night's Watchman. He is a Night's Watchman that was killed and resurrected, like pretty clearly. And Dunk never joined the Watch. And couldn't have, because he's 7 feet tall and very famous. He's a Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. So this is why Michael talks about stuff kind of centered on Tarth, because it's like we need to look for a place where a 7-foot tall dude could at least live 5 or 10 years unnoticed. On an obscure place like Tarth, he goes and hides in the stable whenever an emissary comes over or whatever. Like that could maybe that could happen.
Yeah, you've got a really tall stable boy over there, just like Winterfell.
Well, it's kind of like the gravedigger thing. He wears the hood and he's just digging graves, and it's like, oh, that guy's really tall and he likes the dog a lot. Yeah.
Weird. So his face is all burned up. I wonder. Yeah.
Let's see here. And so that was the first question. And then thoughts on the casting, and specifically Babu Sise, who was Moro in Alien Earth. He is Bennis of the Brown Shield. And all I have to say is that if you watched Alien Earth, you know that this guy is incredible. This is almost an embarrassment of riches to have an actor this good playing Brown Bennis. But the character that he played in Alien Earth was kind of sleazy and menacing and like kind of scummy and weaselly. Like he was that kind of character, but just very menacing. So I feel like Brown Bennis is going to be Brown Bennis the Menace. Like he's going to be, everything's going to have a little more of an edge, but it's going to be incredible. So that I'm very excited about that.
I very much look forward to that character really coming to life, because it's whenever you do the readings, Brown Bennis doesn't have a ton of lines, but the lines could be brought to life in a way that's very it could be very fun to see. But
his perspective is so important. It's just the like, he's corrupt, he's there to get a paycheck and do as little work as possible, and he's sort of cruel in a petty way. He reminds us of like Marin Trant a little bit, or somebody like that.
He is the critique against Hedge Knights, whereas Dunk is the glowing recommendation. And they're very much foils to each other, and it's pretty perfect.
Yeah, and the actor is black, so there will be controversy about it from the usual, folks. And I like, all I have to say about that is that I understand from a certain perspective the argument that in a fantasy world that has, the Dornish people are meant to be kind of Mediterranean and the Summer Islanders are approximately African or whatever, that you should stick with that. Hollywood, for the most part, is doing a thing where they're kind of just doing like race blind casting. Like, they're not really going to explain why Brown Bennis isn't going to be a Summer Islander. Okay, he's just played by a black actor. I understand disagreeing with that. What I don't understand is getting bent out of shape about that, being ugly online about that, saying that it breaks your immersion and you can't enjoy the show. Like, none of that really makes sense to me. That seems more like people trying to fight the culture war, acting like it's a racing white culture. They wouldn't have cast Shaka Zulu as a white person or somebody like that. Those kinds of arguments.
Only 95% of the actors in this show are white. That's not enough. It's a bit much.
Yeah, it's just like, it's kind of like objecting to men playing women or women playing men, which has always happened in theater. So yeah, like I said, if that's breaking your immersion, then it's probably because you have some sort of axe to grind, I feel like, about that kind of stuff. So that's really all I have to say about that. The main thing I have to say is that the actor is incredible. Like, he's really, really good. It's almost going to be like everybody else better bring it, or else Brown Bennis is going to be the best actor on the show, which is going to be kind of funny.
I mean, Peter Cullen, the guy they cast as Sir Eustace, he's not going to be stealing scenes too often from Peter Cullen, I don't think. That is a serious heavyweight actor there. And it's kind of thrown me. I told you about this because I had a voice for Sir Eustace, and now Peter Cullen has one of the most distinctive voices in acting, where it's not a Scottish accent, it's a Peter Cullen, in the same way that you wouldn't say Christopher Walken is not an American accent. He's Christopher Walken. So it's like he has a very, very distinctive voice that you can't confuse for anybody else. You guys have seen him in everything from Braveheart to Train Spotting. He was in Harry Potter. He was in Rings of Power.
Well, so just slow down here. He was the older Durin Dwarf King in Rings of Power, which was basically one of the best characters. Like, I think pretty much everyone that watched Rings of Power agreed the Durin son, father, Elrond acting was like kind of the best pocket of the story. So I really think it's funny that the Dwarven King is now going to play, Eustace Osgrey, who's named after a character from Narnia. So this is just such a fantasy, like, circle of influence. He's Optimus Prime?
Peter, no. That's a separate...
That's somebody different, yeah. He does have that kind of voice.
Yeah, gritty bass rumble, but he can't hide his Scottish accent. But yeah.
And then who was he in Harry Potter?
He was Yaxley, one of the Death Eaters. So he's like, he's got that one line. If my wife were on trial and the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement had a job needed doing, I might just make that my priority.
He is Optimus Prime.
He's Optimus Prime?
Yeah.
No, there's two different spellings here.
Oh.
Peter Cullen, the Scottish actor, is Cullan.
Oh. But that's so funny because it's kind of the same.
Peter Mullen. Peter Mullen.
Okay.
Peter, why am I thinking? Yeah. So I'm the problem here. I was saying Peter Cullen.
You changed. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. I've been saying Peter Cullen because I am a huge fan of Transformers and specifically Optimus Prime.
I was about to say it's one of the all-time best voices for an animated character. Peter Cullen, Optimus Prime. So Peter Mullen is the actor. Okay.
Right.
That's on A Night of the Seven Kingdoms and Harry Potter and Rings of Power. Okay, good job, Sean. Thank you.
I bought it. That's my bad.
Subscribe to Sean's channel, Hero with 1,000 Voices.
When I don't do it as much anymore, but when I used to do my vocal warm-ups, I would do the V speech from V for Vendetta, but I would do it as different characters, and one of them was Gollum, one was Optimus Prime. So
yes, and Orson Welles was Unicron. You said Gollum as Optimus Prime?
No, Gollum or Optimus Prime doing the speech for V for Vendetta.
Oh. Well, you'll have to polish up your Optimus Prime voice now that you've made this conflation.
I practice it every single day of my life.
Can I get a Transformers rollout?
Autobots, roll out.
Oh, that's pretty good. That even sounds affected a little bit. All right, we'll have to think about how to use this. Okay, so, and then the actor who's playing Rohan Weber, what is her name? I do not know it.
I don't remember because I the other two I'd seen in other projects like Alien Earth I'd seen and I'd seen
Lucy Boynton. Yeah, where is she from? The chat wants you to do Soundwave. That's impossible.
I haven't practiced Soundwave, but I'll give it a shot. If you bug me on the next stream, I might have it ready.
Sing Street? What's Sing Street?
I don't know. I'm confused.
Lucy Boynton, Sing Street fame. Sorry, the things we could have researched before the stream.
Yeah, we should have. My bad.
David Inferior, Soundwave Superior. That's it. Nice. Rudy, I've got your question later too, coming up. Okay, so here's an interesting one. How do you think they can handle Tanselle coming back into the Knight of Seven Kingdoms plot, essentially, without distracting and confusing the main story, and without changing the way Dunk repeatedly thinks of her in the other books? And so Peter Claffey gave an interview, and I think there's a little bit of confusion on the internet where people think that he's implying she's going to be in season 2. And that is not how I read the comments. It sounds more to me that this is about future seasons after the first 3, but I clipped it so we can read them. Speaking with Italian journalist Marco Spagnoli, Peter Claffey hinted that Duncan Tanselle's story is far from finished. Sitting alongside Tamsin Crawford, the actor confirmed that he's been told about story developments that go beyond the 3 novellas that George Martin has officially published. Claffey explained that the creative team, including showrunners Ira Parker and Martin himself, have shared additional information about where Dunk and Egg's story eventually goes. Quote, I've had conversations with very in-the-know people, such as George Martin. So I have to be very careful about what I say, Claffey said. But obviously we know the first, second, and third novellas, so we know how things will originate. And the reason that Dunk and Egg leave to go in The Sworn Sword, the second one, is to go to Dorne in search of Tanselle and her company. But without trying to spoil anything, if we push on very far, and he trails off, I'm pretty sure you'll probably see Tanselle and Sir Duncan in the same room together again. So that to me all sounds like we're talking about futures, not the first 3 novella seasons, but future seasons after that. And he's pointing out that in the books, they do go to Dorne in between book 2 and 3. So if I were doing the TV show, I would just move that trip to after the Mystery Night and have them go to Dorne in season 4.
I think something's confused, and he might be misspeaking here, because they're talking about how they just got back from Dorne in the Sworn Sword, right? Like they talk about Lady Vaith and all that at the beginning of the Sworn
Yes,
Sword.
you're right. Yeah, you're right. That was okay. Thank you. That was tickling my brain as I said that. So yeah, they go in between book 1 and 2.
But either way, he would not be talking about how he knows things about, future developments past the novellas, and how he has to be careful about what he says if they were going to bring Tanselle back in seasons 2 or 3. And it wouldn't make sense to have her back. They're not going to do anything that deviates that heavily from the plot unless it's just a flashback.
Yeah, and she can't appear. She can't just show up in the Sworn Sword or the Mystery Night. Like, that just wouldn't make sense. There's not room for her in the plot. But
right.
You could keep it this timeline the same and say they went to because they say it right. We've been to 100 puppet shows and we didn't find Tanselle or whatever. So keep that, but then have her come back later. So like, he went and looked for her, didn't find her, but then somehow they find each other later. Like, that works fine. Or they could just move the Dunk trip until later. But the thing is that basically what Peter Claffey is saying is like, well, I've talked to George and he told me some things, and Dunk and Tanselle will be in the same room together again. So that's not the failed trip to Dorne to find her. This is something else that George has in mind. So yeah, that's how I read that.
I agree. Yeah, we don't know, but he did say that we'll probably see them in a room together again. So we have that.
From Mantis, hey Dave, glad to catch a stream. How do you think Bloodraven will be finally introduced, and will it retcon Game of Thrones at all? No, I don't think you can retcon Game of Thrones. I think you just got to leave it alone. But how will Bloodraven be introduced? I mean, he's already he's been played by 3 different actors in the show actually so far. I think it'll be just the way it is in the books. I think you'll hear about him in season 2 of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. People talk about Bloodraven a lot. It's the drought now, and they're blaming him for everything. And then he appears in the 3rd book in disguise, and then not in disguise. So I think that'll be all the same, because they're doing pretty faithful adaptations. I don't see a reason to change that. You could if you if you cast Bloodraven in season 2, maybe you could do some flashback to King's Landing when Egg's in King's Landing or something, but it doesn't sound like they have the budget for that yet.
Yeah, it seems like a lot to cast him for one scene where all you do is look at him from a distance.
And yes, surely, Reagan Gully, surely A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms will treat Dorne better than a Game of Thrones. Nowhere to go but up, as they say.
Yeah, couldn't do it worse.
Favorite performance of the season, Jacob Square. It's hard to pick because there were so many good ones. I want to give credit to Peter and Dexter, first of all, for like literally being Dunk and Egg. If you want surprise performance of the season, it's got to be Raymond Fossaway. Lionel's wasn't even a surprise. Lionel's just Lionel. Raymond really came out of nowhere and really, I think, affected a lot of people. So there was a lot of great performances, honestly. What stood out to you apart from the main two?
So, well, first, I just want to say Dexter because it is so hard to get a good child actor. But outside of that, there were a number of much smaller roles where the actor just killed it. Raymond was a bigger role, and he absolutely killed it. But if we're talking like Baelor was not a very big role. He didn't get a ton of screen time. He had one episode where he had like 7 or 8 minutes in a room with Dunk, and that was about it. He killed it. Maekar killed it. Similar screen time. But yeah,
a lot of people saying Maekar. He was really a character that was brought to life a lot more than when you read the books. And that's true for some of the books. You really have to slow down and think about what the character's going through. But when you see somebody's face on screen, it forces you to be more empathetic, just subconsciously. We start thinking about Maekar's kids and how hard it must be being the younger brother and war hero, but you're still just, and his brother Maekar. So
I would also add Darren Targaryen. He was so close to exactly how I, imagined him from the reads. And that was just fantastically done by the actor.
Beesbury was great. The bee magic, Beesbury funeral, like that's awesome. Now we've seen a Targaryen and a Velaryon and a Beesbury funeral. We've seen Night's Watch funeral. We're getting some culture here. We've seen the Tully funeral. We've seen Ironborn funerals. So pretty cool. And Ironborn baptism, more importantly.
So I do want to give credit to the character that they added, who wasn't really a character in the novellas. Rowan, the actress, absolutely killed it.
Yeah, I was going to mention her too. Yeah. I thought that helped flesh out our perspective of the common people. It's like Tanselle and Duncan Steely Pate, but Rowan is giving us a pretty good window into a slice of life too. And seeing her move up at the end, it was such a nice tying together of threads between Rowan and Raymond and Chestnut eating apples in the orchard, raising their little Dundarian baby. It's great. It's really great. Worst name day ever. Yeah, she was good. I just love how they wrote 2 little scenes for her. Lady Ashford, Gwyn Ashford. The first scene where she kind of just runs up and says something, "You're stupid," to Dunk. And then at the end, it's kind of an apology when she's like, "Yeah, you did the right thing. I would have done that. That's a good job." So that was, I think, a good example of how the show took even the smallest characters and thought about them a little bit and gave them impact.
Did you say Gwen Ashford?
I did.
Is that her name?
Gwyn. Isn't it Gwyn Ashford?
Well, I know she didn't have a name in the books. Did she have a name in the show? Because that's big to me.
I think they might have named her. Yeah.
Yeah.
People have been saying Gwyn. Maybe they gave her a name. Yeah, and it wasn't in the books.
Well, if you name someone Gwyn or Gwen, it's Guinevere. You're referring to Arthurian lore. I'm sorry, I'm deep in it right now, but there's a lot of reasons to name somebody Guinevere, and most of them have to do with portraying them as a Night's Queen figure, because Guinevere, it literally means like white phantom or pale ghost.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Lady of the Lake.
Right.
stuff going on. Yeah, that makes sense with when you get into the symbolism of Ashford. And yes, the show did give her the name. So
Good.
Gwen R.R. Ashford. Well, the Ashford is a crossing, just like a railroad crossing. So there you go.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Even though there's no Ash River
So
there.
Evil Wizard Freak, and if I don't know if I said the names earlier, Ben and Barrier Stark and Kimberly Fay. Thank you for the questions. And these are all coming from the Discord, by the way. So I will post the new Discord link after the stream. And again, you can join Patreon for free or for money, or you can sign up for a YouTube channel member. Those will all get you a Discord invite. And when I do these Q&As, I'll say something a couple days before, give everyone a chance to send their questions. What would you consider the best queer representations in A Song of Ice and Fire, and why? So we chatted about this before the stream. I'll let you go ahead and start.
Well, I was gonna say Renly, just because I think it's a better way of treating anybody in the LGBTQ spectrum like a human being. The fact that he's gay, like there's a little bit of, gossip about it, as there would be, but for the most part, it's so secondary to anything else in his character arc. And that's how it should be. He's a guy
Right, it's
who's
not his whole
fighting for the throne.
personality or whatever. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. He's fighting for the throne. That's kind of a big deal. He's a hugely powerful, he basically rules the Stormlands even before that. He's on the King's Council. So the fact that, he happens to like dudes on the side, like one, he has the kind of privilege where that would be excused to an extent. And two, it's, that not being the focus of his arc, like it kind of ended up being on the show, unfortunately, made him great queer representation. And you had another a good thought as far as that goes.
Yeah, I just want to continue with Renly. There's a couple points in the chat. Alana's saying he's a great representation of being masculine and a stereotypical male and being gay. They don't necessarily cancel each other out. He is a warrior. He's tall and strong, and that the line that Loras says after Renly dies is one of the most romantic lines in the story. What was it? It's right here. Something about
when the sun sets, a candle cannot replace it. And,
yeah.
and I may not have it perfectly, but I remember
That's the line. Yeah. So yeah, it's that's just what you said. Like it's the same thing with his female characters. Somebody asked him one time, "How do you write such good female characters?" He's like, "Well, I just think about them as people." So all of his characters are complex. There's not any character where you could say, "Well, that their character is just this one thing." There's always more going on with that. So that's definitely one. The other character to mention is Rhaena. She is so developed in Fire and Blood. Her and Alyssa Farman have this crazy toxic relationship, essentially. I mean, maybe it was good for some of the time, but it's pretty destructive, honestly, on both coasts of Westeros for like years and years. Very interesting, very ambitious people. I did a 5-hour stream on Rhaena. I think we can relate to her because she just kind of doesn't fit in to the Targaryen family system, and they try to incorporate her, but she's always chafing against the structure. And so yeah, I really like her. And obviously this leads to the dragon's eggs that become Dany's, and Alyssa Farman sails across the Sunset Sea. I mean, I did a 5-hour stream on this character. She's great. So that's obviously one. Oberyn Martell is interesting. He's created the term Oberyn sexual, basically. Like we compared Lionel, say Lionel's Oberyn sexual, which is just kind of, it really is carnal in the mythological sense. Like Bacchus doesn't discriminate either,
Yeah, many of the
Pan,
Greek gods.
They'll bang they'll F anything that moves, kind of like that's the idea.
Well, and Oberyn is, so the only list longer than Apollo's male lovers is his female lovers. So he's, every story he's in, at least banging one person. But Apollo is definitely one of the bases for Oberyn. Being a, sun spirit, like he's a sun king
That
figure.
makes sense. Yeah.
Pansexual, obviously,
And Rhaegar's a big Apollo figure, and you got John Con over there.
Yeah, his Silver Prince. But yeah, no, Rhaena is great. She's in some ways she's kind of showing the reverse of Renly, just because she should have been king or queen, sorry, but she let her brother become king in order to kind of pacify Westeros. She chose not to let the realm bleed, whereas Renly should not have been king and chose to try to become king, and the realm bled. So it's kind of, a reverse there. And yeah, she has her issues and she causes family drama and stuff, but the realm was a lot better for it.
Nice comparison. You were cooking there. That's what that was. That was good. Yeah, George is always doing commentary on power, people's reaction to power, seeking it. I don't want it, or whatever it is. Yeah, Recalio Rindoon, Queen Recalio. There's some fun little characters like that. The other one I wanted to mention was, of course, Brynden Blackfish. We do not know if he is being written as gay or perhaps asexual. Not asexual. I always say that. That's not what am I trying to say?
I don't know. I
Ace.
tend to, yeah, yeah. Ace being the shorthand for
I guess it
asexual.
is. Yeah, I guess. Okay.
For anybody who is unaware of that, that's kind of,
Or aromantic. It could be anything along those lines. But basically, the line is that, when Catelyn sees her old father, Hoster's like, has he married anyone yet? Has he married some woman? Has he taken a wife yet? And she says, he never will. And this is the whole reason why Blackfish left Riverrun and went to go to work in the Vale, essentially as Knight of the Gate, is because he refused the marriage arrangement that Hoster had made, because Hoster is Blackfish's older brother. So there's a range of possibilities. It could be that somebody's saying maybe he loved Manisa Went, who Hoster married, and so he
maybe.
refused to fall in love with anybody else. To me, it feels more like he's gay, or he's just really not, he's, like I said, ace or something like that. But the point isn't figuring out which one it is. It's just, as a writer, you're giving your readers different kinds of characters to relate to. So for whatever reason, he did not want to participate in a sham political marriage. And there's a lot of sham political marriages that people are forced into all over the story. So it's realistic that a couple people will just be like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't care. I'm sorry. I'm just not. I think that's a really important commentary for Brynden. And if he is written as a gay character, then much like Oberyn or Renly, it's like, yeah, this is not the stereotypical, type of trope here. This is just somebody that has different preferences. And obviously Blackfish is just endlessly tough and cool. So he's always fun to talk about.
Blackfish is our MVP, but kind of one thing in common that I've noticed is that these characters were all handled very poorly in the show. Renly was turned into a gay stereotype. He was a decent jouster. He wasn't, like Loras or Jaime, but he was a good jouster. He won several rounds. He was used to winning several rounds in other tournaments. He wasn't out there just, for the outfits. And they have him like afraid of blood in the show, and like, just they really turned him into a cartoon. And they made, Loras a little bit like, well, they turned him into somewhat of a stereotype as well. Your mic is off.
Oh, I was just saying that late season arc where all of a sudden the Faith was anti-gay and Loras is being arrested. It's like, that's not in the world at all. They just brought that in from our real world to create some artificial drama. So that was lame. Yeah.
Well, and then even Brynden Blackfish, who the actor was fantastic, but they made him just a huge dick to Edmure, who he basically raised. Like, he loved Edmure very much. He was never that cruel to Edmure in the books. He was like their uncle, but their father was gone all the time visiting various bannermen. he was basically raising those 3 kids and Peter. And he's very kind. They made him gruff and mean and all of that. But he towed that line between being a tough guy and a very, accomplished veteran and all of that, while being, a decent person. And he was just chewing out Edmure in the show that one time about marrying to fix his mistake. And it's like, you're not the person to be telling someone they have to marry to fix their mistake. Like, the hypocrisy there is a little bit weird.
That's a good point. I need to make an Edmure did nothing wrong. He's very team small folk. That's an important commentary there.
They hurt him in the show too, and that actor is also fantastic, the Edmure actor.
So lots of good representation, and George has said that characters like Rhaena are somewhat of an attempt for him to be more inclusive. He started writing in the 90s. People change over time. So eventually it dawned on him that he needed a little more representation. And that is where we get characters like Rhaena. So good for George. Old people.
And he went hard.
Stuff. What's that?
He went hard. He had a lesbian polycule.
Yeah, and right. And then there's also some stuff going on with some of the Riverlander women.
Yeah. And then
Dance of the Dragons, right?
And Laenor and Joffrey as well. Yeah. It was God, who was it? One of the Frey. It was the Frey woman in
Black Alley Blackwood and Sabbatha Frey.
Black Alley Blackwood. Yeah. Am I mixing her up with somebody who married Cregan Stark?
Oh, that was Black Alley who married him. Yeah. Sabbatha Frey, but who was Sabbatha? Who was she involved with?
I don't remember, but I do remember that was pretty. George was laying it on pretty thick, making it fairly obvious.
So it was Black Alley. She had a lady love and then got married to a wolf lord. Orange Tabby says.
We definitely don't know that for sure. We know they were friends. It's very possible. I will give that. I will concede that.
Yeah, I haven't read that part of the story in a minute, so I don't recall exactly. But I think it is implied. A fierce, fearless woman with a bawdy tongue. She's said to smell of wood smoke, a feature some found attractive. Sounds like a lot of people found it attractive. She is rumored to have been fond, quote unquote, of Lady Sabbatha Frey. So yeah, I think that's.
Oh, that's harder than I thought it went. So I'll give that up.
Yeah, you were doing a historian. These 2 men were roommates, clearly. Holding each other in the ashes of Pompeii. You could tell they're straight.
What are you talking about? Uncle Mike and Steve aren't gay. They're just interior decorator roommates at 55 years old. Like, yeah, there's that stereotype, right?
Okay, so I'm not gonna ban this person from the channel, but I am gonna remove that comment. And I don't mind if we approach the topic, but I don't want to feel like you're getting your jollies off by throwing around incendiary language around the topic. That is not appreciated.
No, and Tabby, I concede. You were, yeah, that's more likely than not. I'm off on that one.
Allie shared her tent with Lady Sabbatha Frey while on campaign.
Okay.
Platonic tent. Sean says it's a platonic. No, I'll let you off the hook. That's not what you meant. It's okay.
Let me slither out. Let me slither out. no slither in.
You can't slither out of the tent. You were never welcome in the tent, Sean.
Oh,
girls only.
Yeah, it's obviously you can have a platonic sleepover, but you probably, with how that would look in a medieval
not with Black Alley Blackwood. She smells of wood smoke, Sean. If you're in the tent, it's going down.
Yeah.
Uh,
He smells like sandalwood and happiness. But yeah,
Sandalwood and happiness.
but yeah, it's they are cognizant of how that looks in a medieval society with two women who have a certain amount of agency, being from powerful families. They're not hunkering down in a tent to stay warm.
It's not because they have a lack of tents.
They both have their own tents. These are.
Well,
Yeah.
before we move on to the next topic, let me ask you real quick. The chat is mentioning both Dany and Cersei have little experimentation moments, if you will. And they both have questionable power structure, too. With Dany and I think it's Eerie, Dany doesn't, she doesn't command. Like, it's Eerie that kind of initiates it because Dany's having like an erotic dream or something. And Dany goes with it and doesn't really ever follow up on it. And then with Cersei, it's with Tanya Merryweather, and that's a messed up one. Cersei's imagining she's Robert and thinking about the boar, and like that was kind of a crazy thing for George to write, to be honest. What's your reaction to either one of those scenes? And I also just want to give the chat a chance to comment.
So yeah, the Dany Eerie thing, it's probably best that it just happened the once, because after that, like Dany, it was pretty obvious to Dany, like, oh, she is not, like, this is not any kind of a romantic or sexual thing for her. This is duty. Like, her kissing.
Dany senses that it doesn't like it, and she's like, no, you don't have to do that.
And that should be her reaction.
Yeah.
So she dropped it off there, and she found a scoundrel that she liked, and went, and
she does like,
she doesn't have a daddy to piss off, but yeah, she's certainly speed running that. As far as like, yeah, I mean, you kind of get from Cersei's life and the fact that she's a narcissist, how her taking the power back is imagining herself as Robert, the abuser, which is messed up. It makes sense, but it's messed up.
It's kind of perfect for Cersei, but it's definitely chilling to read. And it's interesting because Cersei, a lot of her story is struggling with her gender and the gender roles in Westeros, but in a super negative way, much like Tyrion is definitely, suffers prejudice because of his dwarfism, but the way he handles it is awful. We see it's similar to Tywin feeling the laughter at his father and reacting by doing the Reigns of Castamere. So,
right.
So with Cersei, it's more about power, I guess you would say.
Right. At the very least, Taena is very into it.
Yeah, it seems so. It's hard to tell how much Taena is just manipulating Cersei, though, also, right?
Well, she was very well lubricated. She was a Marish swamp.
Oh, that's right.
Which, obviously is not necessarily the same thing. Like, it's a complicated situation, and it's not good, but I suppose it could be worse.
Thank you. We did need to say Mirror Swamp at least once or twice now, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So there you go. Thanks for the question. That was a good one. Upbeat Paradisio says, what character do you enjoy the most on your most recent read-through that you may have overlooked at first, or vice versa, one you loved but now see their flaws more clearly? Sean, hopefully you can hear that question. I'll repeat it if not. But character that jumped out to me over most recent read-throughs, not necessarily. I've been through so many read-throughs. But who are the characters that came out to me more over time? I think Renly is one of those characters where the first time, and yes, these are all Discord questions. The first time I didn't think too much about Renly as a character. He's just more of an object in the story to other people's stories. Yeah, definitely Jon the Fiddler. I mean, he was great the first time, but when me and Tim did the reread, we really enjoyed Jon the Fiddler. Let's see, who else? I mean, I like all the characters, so it's hard for me to think about, like, what character grew on me more over time. I really did like them all. I like Ariane chapters. I like Brienne chapters. And then who do I love more but see their flaw? Like, I think I've come to see some of the flaws of Ned a little bit. And it's mostly with, we've talked about it, just him being traumatized from Robert's Rebellion and going up north and just sort of pulling the hood down and not keeping an eye on Robert, not keeping spies in King's Landing, not grooming Sansa to actually be in a political marriage if that's what he was going to do. And obviously we're using grooming in the positive sense there, grooming someone for office. So did you hear the question, Sean?
I did. It's a tough one. I would say I've noticed a few smaller characters a lot more who are able to kind of inject a lot of personality and affect the plot in fairly significant ways, considering how little screen time and significance they should have. One of them is Garland Tyrell.
Okay.
So him being front and center during the poisoning of Joffrey, him being the voice of reason and moderation, and he's showing that he's actually a decent person there. And he's one of the people who didn't immediately blame Tyrion and actually kind of advocated that he was wrong place, wrong time. He was also standing up for Tyrion when Joffrey was being evil. And then you look at, when George writes a character like that and he wants you to notice that they're doing good things, the right things, etc. In the background, he'll have something else happen. So in a scene that he's not in, we find out that Garland Tyrell has been given Brightwater Keep. So that's where the Florence house is. And the Florence obviously have had their holdings taken away by the crown for supporting Stannis.
Right.
So giving them Brightwater Keep, one of the biggest and most powerful seats in the Reach, one of the most ancient houses, that's a huge deal. And they gave it to a second son of House Tyrell. And it's a big part of the power dynamic where Cersei is kind of fighting the Tyrells for every appointment and all of that. But, it's also kind of nice in the back of my head that, this is a good guy who's doing the right thing in pretty much every scene. He's also a serious warrior. And then good things happen to him.
That's a good answer. That was a great answer. And who did you used to like more, but now you kind of think, oh man, this is maybe not the best character?
Peter Baelish. I never thought he was like a good guy, but I thought he was a more interesting character, and that he was just kind of this genius behind the scenes. And he's a very smart guy, obviously, but there's a little bit more just kind of blatant, fraud and bribery to all of his schemes than I kind of noticed. That it's a little bit less, mastermind in the background and a little bit more of like petty bribery and corruption.
Yeah, he's definitely revealed as like a true psychopath. Like this guy has been nursing a grudge for years and years, and he's bringing down 2 houses and manipulating the realm and stuff in order to do it. Like this is all about his obsession with these Tully sisters and the Starks and stuff. Like that's...
It's also a very interesting and fun case study. Again, sorry for doing this, but for King Arthur. He's a Lancelot figure. He fights a duel for his lady's honor. He's doing except the difference is he doesn't get the girl. So he doesn't get Cat, who he wants. And so it's like if Lancelot never got Guinevere. But then at the same time, he's still doing the Lancelot thing of, cuckolding his king's wife. Jon Arryn isn't really his king. He's his lord, but it's the same idea. He's doing all of this. And he's named after, Peter Baelish. Sir Bael is one of Sir Bael and Sir Balin. Those are Grail Knights. So it's, there's a lot of...
it's a Hall of King, Winter King, Grail Knight thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, when I say psychopath, of course, I'm not necessarily being clinical, but this is just a guy, I don't know what else to say. He's just He's a psycho. He's a sociopath. He is malevolent to the point of like, wow, something is genuinely wrong here. However you want to say it. Yeah. And let's see. We are going to have a question about the gods of the faith of the seven. I saw somebody in the chat ask about that. I've got one about that in here. I don't think they resurrected. Well, we'll get to it. It was portrayed that way, symbolically. Let's see. Michaela's alt account. Do we think that the old gods of the Squishers will have anything to say, the deep ones, about the ongoing apocalypse happening above Westeros, above the waters, imagining a battle of five armies type scenario? Is Euron their conduit of influence, or is he becoming a nascent new god of his own? So I'll look for Tim. If you have any comments this is probably more than you can contain to a comment, but I do think so. Not just because of Euron's squid face and the idea that the deep ones are real, but specifically I've locked in on this idea that Euron has been blaspheming the drowned god and how pissed off Aeron is about that. I think that could come back to bite Euron potentially, and I do think we'll hear from some sort of Kraken or something like that, which we'll have to interpret as the will of Cthulhu. But no, for the most part, I've actually had seriously a couple of people criticize our entire way of reading the books, essentially by saying, "Oh, you think the deep ones are going to be like?" No, the deep ones aren't going to be a big thing for the end of the story. They're fun world building because George absolutely loves this corner of fantasy inspiration, the Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, etc. universe. He loves that. And so he's put it in the background. What are the dead things in the water at Hardhome? Will something come out of the water at Old Town? Like maybe, but it's not going to be a main feature. It's going to be something fun for us to notice and enjoy. So I do always say that about the deep ones. They are very real though, and Biter is a deep one.
It's funny to me because he's not referencing Lord of the Rings all the time, and he's not referencing Lovecraft all the time, but they always seem to be connected, and that's super interesting for me. So like Dead Things in the Water, obviously that's a Lord of the Rings reference from the Dead Things in the Water, with the same phrasing from the Dead Marshes.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, that Frodo, Sam, and Gollum. Yeah, he uses the same phrasing even. Frodo, Sam, and Gollum go through it. There was an ancient battle. There are dead people like trapped and preserved under the water in the marshes. But it's also very clearly doing, like dead, undead Lovecraft stuff. And Euron is obviously very much a Sauron figure, but he's also very much a, Cthulhu-esque squid person. So it's... those things are being connected was a very interesting choice by George, and they are connected basically every time. Every time you see something that's a clear reference to Lovecraft, you're going to find, Tolkien stuff in there. It's very interesting. But I would say he's not going to become a god at all. I would say he's going to do the very Lovecraftian thing of, trying to become a god and becoming completely possessed.
Yeah, and I've got some new stuff to say about Shade of the Evening and Euron and the others coming up. I'm going to get into it a little bit in the Danny Blackwood video. And then next Sunday, Sean, if you are free, I was going to invite you and Tim on to talk about Shade of the Evening trees in the heart of winter and some crazy stuff. So we will get into that next week. But what do you do when you spend 3 months on a short story for a competition and realize the day before submission you've accidentally but ripped it off? I would just say, I don't know what you can do in a day, but if you realize that you have written something that is too similar to something else, then I would just change. I would keep the story the same, but like change the setting or change something about the environment that disguises it. Like The Lion King is similar to Hamlet, but you don't notice it right away because they're lions in Africa. So something like that, so that you don't throw away your compelling character movement and stuff. I would just change the setting or something about the environment.
I would
And
also, oh, sorry. I would also, make sure you're not suffering from imposter syndrome here. The reality is we are somewhat a compilation of our influences. There is some nascent creativity in varying amounts in people, but we also all read a bunch of different books and saw movies and had people that affected us and blah, blah, blah. Yes, like there's a bunch of, we're just talking about influences in A Song of Ice and Fire of different authors. The fact that you're seeing some of these authors in your writing does not necessarily mean you're ripping them off. So maybe make sure you're not being too harsh on yourself. If it really is too much ripped off, then I absolutely agree with what David is saying. Change it up a little bit, see what you can do to tweak it so that it's not the same story. Maybe make sure that it just doesn't end the same.
Oh, you know what? Another thing you can do is and I'll come back to the super chat in a second. Another thing you can do is use George's "the road not taken" technique. So you can take your story that you feel maybe is too predictable or similar and say, well, this is what was going to happen. And then find some interesting point in the story, have a catastrophe or a different choice be made that puts things on an alternate timeline. That works really well to give your story depth and dimension because that's how real life works. We make our plans and then something else happens along the way, and that's what we call our life. So you could do something like that as well.
It's kind of funny is I was going through something similar where I was looking at the scene in Night of the Seven Kingdoms where Dunk comes back to his camp and Egg is just there. And it's Bilbo and Smaug. Like the scene, it follows the Bilbo and Smaug introduction scene. It's so funny, except that Egg is obviously the dragon, but they're doing things like, oh, how did you get here? And he like got here on a cart, and the way that he describes it is very similar to, one of the titles that Bilbo takes for himself, Barrel Rider. Then Dunk starts thinking about his title, and he's like, oh, I can't be from Pennytree. Am I from Flea Bottom? I'm Sir Duncan the Tall. And and they're just going through like one by one, and these are all so awfully similar to the scene of Smaug and Bilbo. And it's funny too because Egg is the dragon, but he's the small one like Bilbo was, and Dunk is a giant. And it's so funny the way that it's done.
That is the kind of stuff that George likes to do. And that's the whole thing, again, what I was saying about homages is, change the context of it, but then keep the element that inspired you, and you can do something pretty interesting. So next question from AKA MeWow. So in United Seven Kingdoms, second season, when and if we see the first Blackfyre Rebellion flashbacks, who do you think would be a good Daemon Blackfyre actor, or even John the Fiddler? I am really bad at actors. We all laugh at the Daemon, I can't even say it. The Henry Cavill thumbnail. Of course he did it. Of course he did. The channel we're talking about. Like Jon Snow show trailer. There's no trailer. Game of Thrones movie. The Game of Thrones movie announcement, in all seriousness, is about Aegon the Conqueror, but I think that this is being slightly misreported, okay? Because what I heard is that what's happening is there are two things being developed simultaneously. A TV show, which Mattson Tomlin is working on, and he's been talking about that for over a year, working on that script. And then more recently, we have heard that they are simultaneously looking at doing it as a movie, and that somebody else is working on that. And that's being reported sometimes as its own story, but I think that's the same story, and I don't think they've picked a lane yet. So
I kind of have a pick for a few of these. I would really like to see Callum Turner as John the Fiddler.
Who's that?
Trying to think what else he's been in. He was in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. He played Theseus Scamander, Newt's older brother, who's too perfect and awesome and good looking all the time. But I've seen him in other things too, And he has like the kind of, charisma, and he can, pull off that kind of roguish smile where he's pulling everything through by charm. And maybe there's not necessarily any substance behind it, which is kind of how I feel about the Fiddler to a point. So I like him for that. I like who plays Tom Hiddleston. I like him for Bloodraven, which they didn't ask, but I cast those three together. And then Damon Blackfyre. I'm just so upset that they've spread the rumor about Henry Cavill because I can't think of anybody else for it now.
Well, we'll have to see. Like I said, I don't know actors. I'm really bad at that. And we have missed a few super chats. So let me flip this over to the fan funding side, and we'll go back here. See, that's a good one. Maester Luwin is one of the few maesters that has a Valyrian steel link. Why would he snark send Grumpkins to Bran when he started with the Wolf Dreams? He got his Valyrian steel link from the Citadel. And at the Citadel, the lesson is that magic is gone. So it's kind of like they study it as this archaic thing that used to be here. And it's very safe and interesting to them as long as it is an academic pursuit and something that is not around anymore. So that is the school of thought that Luwin is coming from. He's talking about it like this curiosity from the past. Oh, but Bran, no, that's all safe. The ink is dry on that. They're not around anymore. So that's just his bias from the Citadel. That's my interpretation anyway.
Well, and the way that George has presented magic in his world is that it is hard to pin down. It's not, there isn't a study of magic. They didn't have, skin changer schools where people learned how to do it. You kind of apprenticed to somebody and figured it out as best you could, sometimes beyond the wall. But for the most part, magic in general, in all its iterations, is just very nebulous. And that's not something that the Citadel would ever like. And so it's not something that the Citadel would show great reverence for when they're, teaching concrete facts.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And when you're looking at the people who actually believe magic is real in the Citadel are the ones a part of the conspiracy or Marwyn, essentially. So I think that's going to be very few people. Remember when you guys read through the Hedge Knight, Sean called Arlen Call, and then the show gave us the Dothraki singing. Do you remember what he's talking about? Or what they're talking about? Oh, your mic's off. You're muted.
So I've been talking about how Sir Arlen was doing a lot of Khal Drogo stuff and Dothraki stuff in general, like him going everywhere on a horse. Like, obviously that's not unique to him, but he lost the strength to ride and fell from his horse. And it was very much like a Khal who cannot ride is no Khal. He tells Dunk not to get too attached to his horse, but he personally was even more attached to the horses than Dunk was, constantly, spending his last coin on giving them treats and stuff. So it's very much, mimicking the relationship a Dothraki has with his horse, which is a monogamous partnership. And it's anyway, there are a lot of other similarities. I wrote them down somewhere, but I can't, access that now. But then they had Sir Arlen. If you look at the subtitles, when he's in that scene with Dunk following him around every night, he was stopping and singing in Dothraki. And that just reeks of George saying, okay, you didn't get it that I was trying to make this thematic parallel between him and the Dothraki, a horse riding warrior, who goes all across the continent. So here it is more directly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was thinking that they'd eventually show us Sir Arlen served with a Dothraki for a couple years and learned all his drinking songs, But it could just be that he admires the Dothraki because he lives on a horse. That does make sense. Sorry if this question is boring for everyone here, but could you please summarize your moon meteor theory? I remember your first video, but it's been a long time. Let's see. The theory is that basically it starts with the two moons, the two legends about the moon cracking. This is how I noticed it. We're looking for what could cause a global winter scenario of some kind. And you basically have three candidates. You've got a supermassive volcanic explosion like Toba or something like that, or maybe even needs to be bigger. That's really going to give you like cloudy skies and global famine. It could be trumped up into a long night over, over hundreds of thousands of years or whatever. But really, it sounds more like a nuclear or a comet impact type of thing, a truly global event. And since we know this isn't a secret sci-fi universe, it pretty much leaves an impact event. And then we've got these two legends about the moon cracking. And if anything like a moon cracking happened, whether it's just a big enough impact to look visually like something's happened to it, or it's actually obliterated, could be a smaller moon because it was, the second moon supposedly. But if there's any sort of cataclysm involving a moon or a satellite, a comet that was captured in orbit and looked like a moon for a few days before it blew up, anything like that is going to give you meteors. It's going to give you rocks raining down through the atmosphere, and that could cause a long night. And then the cincher is when you get into the Azor Ahai mythology, it's not always the bleeding star. Melisandre a different time says when the stars bleed, that's when Azor Ahai is going to come back, when darkness falls heavily on the world and the stars bleed. And it's like, okay, so this long night event, it's linked to multiple bleeding stars. That just sounds like a meteor shower, and that would cause the long night. So that's essentially the theory, the simple nut of it. It's reinforced by the symbolic recreations that are in like damn near every chapter. Like when Benero points to the moon and he makes a fist, and then he explodes his hand in fire and etches the glyphs of doom and darkness. That's basically a charades version of the theory. And then there's just lots of symbolism. So that's the simple version.
There's a mountain of evidence, and you said you'd seen the first one. You should go back and listen to it if you want, because there is just so much evidence. But yeah, you have to think about how this would look to a primitive culture. So if you see a comet hit the moon, though, two bodies in the sky like that, you will see the impact explosion, and it will look like the moon got destroyed. And then the next thing you notice, the atmosphere is blocked with debris, and you cannot see the moon or the sun. So it is the long night because the sun is gone, and it looks like the moon was killed. So that is what they describe in their myths. And that's basically the common thread between all the myths.
And then there's a lot of clues about falling stars in general. Bloodstone Emperor worships a meteor, a black stone that fell from the sky at the time of the long night. The Dane legend, Grey King, there's a gray thunderbolt from the storm god that sets the tree on fire, and Prometheus gives the fire of the gods to man. The hammer of the waters. Just a lot of things that seem like, these are mythical memories of stars falling out of the sky hundreds and thousands of years ago. Sean has a voice beyond compare. The numerous voice notes of him singing in his car he sends me are proof of that fact. Who's this now?
He's in my Patreon and Discord. I did send him a couple. Just me spoofing a song. I've done that.
Sean has some interesting Patreon levels available.
That's not part of the Patreon package, but if you chat with me on Instagram and where we're I'm a friendly guy. We'll talk. I'll send you a goofy message once in a while. Maybe Optimus Prime or a song or something.
Yep, I'm pretty open to Instagram chat too. But if you send me reels, it's over, and I just don't watch reels. And if you send me a long theory about why Jon is the child of somebody other than Rhaegar and Lyanna, I'm going to pretend I didn't see that. So let's see here. Of all the adaptations, what is your favorite episode or season of A Song of Ice and Fire TV yet? Not show as a whole per se. I think that some of the joy that I experienced in House of the Dragon season 1 would be what I would say. I'm not saying that there weren't better moments here and there in original Game of Thrones, particularly when they followed the books. But after the ending of a Game of Thrones being so bad, and I want to see what the live chat says about this, House of the Dragon season 1 really was a palate cleanser. So much of it felt like we're just recentering on the books. It's a detailed world. And even though not everything was perfect, it was pretty good. And I liked the time skip between the two actors. Should have had 2 more episodes. We've talked about this before, right at the 5-6 jump. Justice for Laena and Harwin. But yeah, season 1 of House of the Dragon, I think, was the most fun I've had. Early seasons of Game of Thrones were pretty fun too.
Right. But that's kind of how we got here. Like some of us, we started with the books before there was a show. Not me. I started in about 2012 after the show was already a thing. So I got into like the Westeros.org forums and stuff after that. But it was like a lot of us got into A Song of Ice and Fire because Game of Thrones started out so strong. So that's our introduction, and it fell off. And that was super disappointing. So yeah, it was like, when House of the Dragon had that feel that the early Game of Thrones season had, where it felt like George's world, where it felt like, there was good political intrigue, where the characters were well fleshed out and represented and intelligent and blah, blah, blah. And then it stopped feeling like that. And the obvious culprit is cutting George R. R. Martin out of the process, because why would you want somebody who's been in TV for almost 50 years and wrote the book you're adapting?
It sounds tedious and annoying, Sean.
But it's obviously worked very well for Dunk and Egg, and it's a very different feel, but I love it every bit as much as I love the early seasons of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked a lot about Night of the Seven Kingdoms season 1. It was definitely fantastic. So I feel like most of it's been pretty good. Like, we complain because it is almost perfect at times. It does such a good job of bringing the world to life that, like, we care about it. We're into it, and we want to see it be as best as it can be. So I think when you step back and watch some other shows, sometimes you feel like, okay, yeah, actually this is pretty entertaining. The only exception is like some of the sloppy writing towards the end of a Game of Thrones. You watch other shows and you're like, okay, this show is treating me like an adult. Why didn't the latter seasons of Game of Thrones do that? But yeah, let's not belabor that point.
Yeah. Okay.
Ross says it works both ways as well. Dust and debris are the only thing that could explain the irregular seasons. Well, I hesitate. The only thing is that George has said, like, the answer to the irregular seasons is primarily a magical answer. It's just that we know he is inspired by nature when he makes his magic. So the Doom is a supermassive volcanic explosion, chain explosion, but with magic on it. Obsidian is formed in lava. It's cooled lava, so it has fire mojo in it. That kind of thing. So when we talk about the impact winter, it's not about how big was the rock and is there a debris field and all this stuff and, the physics of it. It's just a loosely inspired idea. But I do agree that if there's part of the moon out there, it could be causing weird seasons. Yeah, the sun could be moving through a hazy debris field. But the thing is, they don't say anything about the sun being dim. So I really think it's more a matter of the moons having been made of ice and fire magic. One of the moons was ice associated, the other one was fire associated, and when they were both in harmony, the seasons were regular. It's a magical planet. So one of the moons is knocked out of the sky and turned into oily black stone rocks that are embedded into the earth. Now everything's all screwed up. Something like that.
I could never decide whether there's one or two moons, because there's also the compelling argument that it was a fire moon, and then when it got killed, it became an ice moon, which is like kind of the cycle that we see in a lot of this. Like, you'll see a dragon person become an other, right? So it's like you get a fiery magic figure, they die, they go into the werewood net, and then they come out, icy with the magic very much leaning towards icy nature magic. Where
It's that same old debate we have about Nissa Nissa and Night's Queen. Are they the same people or are they similar? Yeah.
yeah.
I'm angry about Rhaenys' hair not being black. Oh, we're going back for that, huh? Destroys the whole plot about Cersei's kids not being Baratheons. Only if you think about it. So, yeah, I don't worry about having continuity between the shows that much. Yeah, they should have made her hair black. We had enough silver wigs. I do agree. I just don't have that strong feeling about it. But it's what made her distinctive, though. So I don't disagree. If Jon is resurrected beyond the wall in the Grove of Nine, could he be stuck up there like Coldhands? Yes, absolutely. I think the others want to steal his body because that's what will allow them to pass the wall. So I think him being ice whited is intrinsically tied to crossing the wall. But it could work more like what you're saying.
Well, I think a big part of, really the huge theme of this entire series is like reconciliation, like killing the cycle of violence, returning everything back to how it's supposed to be in the natural cycle, that kind of stuff. So the fact that Coldhands exists is an abomination of the cycle. You're not supposed to live forever as, some magical undead thing, right? And there is something wrong there. And he might be fighting, technically for the side of good, but you can't have him existing when the story is over. You need a version of him that is mortal, being, the ranger beyond the wall figure. And that may end up being Jon. He may be the more normalized, correct version of Coldhands.
I do think it'll end that way for Jon, yes. Hi guys, who do you think will support Dany when she gets to Westeros? I don't really know. I wouldn't be able to pull that answer out of my pocket, Cheryl. Thank you for the question. You'd have to go through all the major houses and sort of think about what you know about the houses and take guesses. And I just don't have that answer for you off the top of my head. Do you have any idea about that?
I think a lot of the Reach will end up supporting it. I think it'll come down to very similar lines as Robert's Rebellion. But I think it'll also be very, very confused because of Fagon.
Yeah, I really just have no idea. Yeah, the board's going to change a couple times before Dany gets there.
And then, of course, the board gets flipped when they all go north to fight the others, which, Fagon may be dead by then. But, sorry, Fagon truthers. But,
He's not leaving. He's not getting out of King's Landing once he gets there.
No. He may be the one defending it like Cersei was, or he'll just be dead.
Once we get past the the 3 novellas, any chance Egg gets Duncan down to Starfall on the way to Dorne? Yeah, I mean, Starfall's in Dorne. Training with the Sword of the Morning at Grandma's. Yeah, at Grandma Dane's. Yes. Right. I mean, Makar's wife died, so I could see them visiting. Yeah, that's something I would definitely think about working that into if we got like 10 seasons. I mean, it's up to George. He's the one who outlined this stuff, so... Yes, that's a good idea. I like that idea.
It would just be so perfect thematically because later on Dunk is going to become a white sword. So how do you train to become a white sword? You go to Starfall. But yeah, it's also just, it's good because Egg is playing the prototypical Dane in that whole, Dunk watches the star fall, this is your meteor theory essentially, and the star falls next to him, it's a dragon egg. It's Egg. So it's just, he has to go through his Karate Kid montage to become a white sword at Starfall. I could totally see it.
I like it. Yeah, I do like that idea. The show ruined RLJ because they made Lyanna look like a hypocrite and the fate of Elia and her kids so much more mean-spirited. Yeah, I have often pointed this out. There's no reason for Rhaegar to divorce Elia because in Dany's vision... in the House of the Undying, Rhaegar's holding his 2 kids with Elia going, there must be one more. So he literally, he thought that his two kids with Elia were two out of the three of these three heads of the dragon. So why would he divorce her? Like, why would he just marry both women? Targaryen have done that before. So yeah, I don't think there will be a divorce in the books. I think he will marry Lyanna.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that makes her a hypocrite. Just because she talked about Robert's infidelity doesn't mean that she's some sort of prude who would never, ever, ever do that. She's just pointing out his nature. That's all. So I think people make too much of that sometimes.
Yeah, and it's just it's pretty clear that that did not seem like a point of contention when we were looking at Rhaegar and Elia in the dream that clearly happened. They knew, we know from the histories, that Elia was not capable of having another child, that would, her health did not allow. So him saying, there has to be a third, and her not freaking out is kind of, confirmation that she was at least, somewhat on board with this. And maybe she was, part of it and understood that bad stuff is coming and the prince that was promised would need to be a thing. So
yeah,
also,
clearly he's talking about all this stuff in front of Elia. So Elia's not in the dark. She knows about all this stuff. And this is more evidence of the way I'm increasingly coming to see Rhaegar, is that he did share his thoughts on prophecy with Arthur Dayne and Oswell Went and probably Ashara and Elia and then eventually Lyanna and Howland Reed it would have been at some point, because Howland went to the Isle of Faces and then seemingly sent, RNL there. So yeah, it seems like they're all workshopping this stuff together. And that's why I think there's a lot of secrets to come out. And yes, I'm very excited about the stage play and hope that we'll learn something new about it.
it was also really goddamn dumb that they made Jon's name Aegon when Rhaegar already has a son named Aegon with Elia.
Well, we were looking at the, in the Discord, we were doing our group read of the Mystery Night. And there's all this stuff about John the Fiddler and how his name's really Damon. And Dunk even has this line, is like, Damon, not John, Damon. I was just like, wouldn't that be funny if John's name is Damon?
Well, and it makes sense because Damon is essentially, adding the D, that he's the demon version of Aemon. And I think there's a lot, if you go through the text, I think there are a lot of hints that John's name is Aemon. There's a really funny passage where he's talking about how he's no Lord Commander. He's talking about Mormont, and then he ends up becoming Lord Commander, and he's no Aemon Targaryen. And it turns out, really he is / becomes both.
Yep, I do. That is still my favorite pick, is Aemon. New to the channel, had a big debate with my friends recently on why Benjen makes so much sense as the hooded man in Winterfell. My friends disagree. Love to hear your take. I've always liked the Robert Glover theory about that. I would love to hear the Benjen theory. This is a video I'm clicking on if I see it. I don't know what the theory is, though, other than maybe it's Benjen. Like, what's the evidence that it would be him?
I don't think that it's Benjen. I'm sorry. It is very interesting. I probably would click on it. I agree there, but it's almost certainly not Benjen.
How would he get back south of the wall? Why would he go south of the wall without checking into the Night's Watch and then go to Winterfell and mess with Theon?
It requires a lot of mental gymnastics, and it's not that they're necessarily wrong. It's more a question of like, why, and what narrative purpose does that serve? But I agree. I think it's Robert Glover, partially from the way that he was so familiar with Theon. And Robert Glover would have been in the strategy tent with Robb. He was one of the two main advisors with Brynden Blackfish, deciding the campaigns and schemes for Robb's army. So Robb keeping Theon there, like they would have had that familiar relationship. So Robert Glover makes a lot of sense to me when he's, talking about Theon as a Theon Turncloak, and he's talking about all that. He would be the person who considers Theon a Turncloak, knowing all the facts. It makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
He's
and
all
the only reason he's not killing Theon on sight, and he could see he wants to, but he doesn't because he has strategic goals that he is trying to achieve. If that is Robat Glover, he's a secret agent man.
he is.
And yes, I think Theon would recognize Benjen. I also do not think Benjen is Mormont's Raven. I did watch Quinn the GM's video about that. I think it's a good theory, and I'm not saying it can't be, but I still think it's Bloodraven. I think it makes more sense that it's Bloodraven. And the main problem with the Benjen thing is that Benjen, in order to have second life in an animal, you need to have already skin changed the animal, so far as we know. And it could be that Benjen is secretly skin changing ravens out in the wild, but we're never really shown that. And Mormont has his raven before, like he's had that raven for a while. So like Benjen is warging into the raven that hops on Mormont's shoulder. That doesn't really make sense to me. We would see the raven on Benjen's shoulder if so. So that's kind of where it doesn't really add up.
It's also just, it's good, really dramatic confirmation that, you know, Bloodraven is warging these because first off, like landing on his right shoulder, Bloodraven was Hand to the King to how many different kings for how long? Like he's doing some Hand to the King stuff. He also, Bloodraven, is a raven. And so he's the raven on Mormont's shoulder because he used to run the Night's Watch and he's still kind of running it from the shadows in a Hand to the King type way. So it all just makes a lot more sense if that's Bloodraven. And we know that Bloodraven has that ability. He is a very powerful green seer and skin changer.
And I saw that Quinn also made another video about the idea that Craster killed Benjen. And I think that is right. And I think that those black sausages they're Night's Watchmen.
It's possible.
I definitely think that that's an old theory from somebody on the Westeros forums. Oh God.
Whether directly or indirectly, I agree. It was Craster who got Benjen killed or killed him. And there's that whole, you know, death of a ranger thing that I think dovetails into that pretty well. But yeah, it's I don't think Benjen is alive.
Yeah, so like I said, with Second Life, you know, that's something that we see that happen with Varamir. Like, for example, he tries to do a body snatching, which is different than normal Second Life. But when he fails to take Thistle's body, he's voomped back into his wolf One Eye, because that is his animal that he probably bonded with first, or that he has the most strong bond with. So if Bran were to die, as Jojen says, he would voomp into Summer, wherever Summer is. So in order for Benjen to voomp into Mormont's Raven, they would have needed to already been having that skin changer bond. And that just seems conspicuous by its absence, kind of like we're not shown that.
It's kind of like the theories that Ned was warging into a crow when he got his head cut off, and yeah, I don't really buy it. There's just not really any basis or precedent for it, and that's not how George writes. When something happens, even if it's a surprise in the moment, if you go back and read it several times, you're going to see the foreshadowing and you're going to see the narrative build up. It makes sense.
Like Jojen Paste. When you go back and look at Jojen Paste and you read all those Bran chapters with making the acorn paste in the Cranogmen helm as if it were brains, like, yeah, it's
that was one of the ones you sold me on. I absolutely did not buy that the first time that I got that theory.
I challenge anyone to watch that whole video and finish the whole bowl of Jojen Paste video and say that his brains weren't in that cup. I dare anyone to do that.
You sold me on it long before the video, but yeah, it was that was definitely, yeah, I didn't buy it and then I did.
2 brains, 1 cup, 2 brain lobes, 1 cup.
Oh.
Slurp it down, Bran. Slurp it down. We'll tell you the truth when you're older, when you're ready. Where did Jojen go? Well, funny thing. Okay, so Gilly may have eaten Benjen. That's true. Yeah. And now the reason why I am somewhat open to the idea that somehow the Benjen is in Mormont's Raven, like what if I'm missing something or whatever. I do think all the Starks do have latent skin changing abilities. Like, you don't get 6 Starks in one generation with 2 different parents. Like, Lyanna's kid and all of Ned's kids were all skin changers. That's because that gift was activated by the presence of the direwolves, which tells you that the gift is latent probably all the time, and it's activated when the magical animals are nearby, or when the comet passes back overhead and the magical animals are nearby. We're not supposed to, because we're told, like, oh, only 1 in 1,000 is a skin changer, and only 1 skin changer in 1,000 is a green seer, and all these long odds. It's like, oh, it doesn't really seem like that's true when we get so many at once. Like, they can't be rare. The gift is latent, so open
Also
to it for that reason. Have I heard of the 3-eyed theorist? No, I have not.
Those are also probably not numbers taken from the census. He's 1,000 and 1,000. Those are big round numbers. He's just saying that it's not common. Like, people read too much into some of these things sometimes.
Kirsty Angel, as usual, you are putting a whole theory into one comment, and I don't know what I'm supposed to key in on here exactly. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, she's saying, like, if you look at the mythology, usually the king and the sun and the moon are king and queen of some kind. So if you have 2 moons, it's kind of a love triangle. Those things lead to tension. Rhaenys and Rhaxys were shot down in Dorne. Not because she quarreled with Visenya, but yeah, maybe. But it seems like the Planetos system was in harmony when it had the 2 moons, and that it's been thrown out of whack after the moon was killed. So I don't think that fits, really. Reading Rhaegar, thanks for letting me crash on your couch and drink all the Hennessy. I do need a new bottle. We're out, Rhaegar. Lots of fun this season, great coverage and conversations in between. As always, praise Garth. And his name is Fagon. Yeah, I had to do the Flexi Spot ad without you because you were AWOL. So that was... I've got an ad coming in the new video. It will not have Rhaegar. It will not be funny. It will just be information. So hopefully you'll watch it. The item is nice. Got more standing desk, more Flexi Spot, standing desk action coming your way. How do you think the Sand Snakes could play a role in how Cersei's trial unfolds? Well, the Sand Snakes are going to be causing a lot of trouble in King's Landing, and they would be keenly interested in having a hand on how Cersei's trial unfolds. That's a very good point. Tyene is taking Oberyn's seat on the council, or is it Lady Nym? Lady Nym, and Tyene is the Septa. She's the fake Septa, and she's been sent to the mother to... wherever the Septas are. The fake.
It's pretty great. Also, I think it's going to end up looking a lot like Winterfell. So they're basically the Spearwives coming in, and they're going to start killing people.
Here for it.
It'll be a little bit, I think, more refined than what is going on in the abject.
People will turn up dead, and it's like, who's killing these people? Yeah.
Right. So I think there'll be a little bit of that, but it's also going, like Winterfell, there's going to be a regime change in the middle of all this. So, the Boltons are going to lose Winterfell. Cersei is going to lose King's Landing. And I think we really just have to think of these as polar opposites. So, like, the Spearwives are all very, nature magic coded. They're all, kind of like dryads. You've covered that a lot. We're getting the Sun Spear version of that in King's Landing, which is very much a sun-coated seat as opposed to Winterfell's, ice moon-coated seat.
That sounds very believable, that people will start dying when sand snakes start showing up. Cersei's trial, I'm not sure exactly how it's going to go. I do see a lot of the Cersei wildfire blowing out the Sept foreshadowing. I do think she's going to blow something up, but I don't know if it'll be at the trial or maybe when Fagon is attacking the city. Maybe those things will coincide. That would be a lark.
I think it will be Fagon's coronation in the Sept of Baelor.
That would be sick. That would be fun to blow that up. I'd almost be on Cersei's side there. I mean, not really, but
Also, there's already a hooded man killing people in King's Landing. Varys.
right. Well, I was thinking that the Sand Snake murders will kind of blend into Varys's murders, and it will just be like, what's going on here? Jack the Ripper.
Well, plus
Nissa question here. Where was it?
Varys is a Fagon person, and I think the Sand Snakes will end up supporting Fagon. So it'll be a very similar. They'll be on the same side in the same way that the Hooded Man is kind of somewhat working with the Spearwives in a way, maybe.
If Nissa Nissa is the Amethyst Empress, can she also be a child of the forest? If not, which theory do you prefer? Yes, the answer is yes, she can be both. If you look at fantasy elves, they often have silver hair. So it's actually not hard to imagine silver-haired people that are kind of part elven. And the thing is, the god emperors were marrying, potentially, god empresses from Lang. Not only because they're called god empress, not only because Lang is part of the Great Empire of the Dawn, but because of the Tiger Woman, Bloodstone Emperor thing, and Lang is the land of 10,000 tigers. So there's a lot of clues that there may have been some interbreeding. And then there's also clues Great Empire of the Dawn came to Westeros to learn the magic of the Children of the Forest, which means, hanky-panky. So, yes, there could definitely be Green Seer elf genetics in the Gemstone Emperor bloodline. We're never going to find out because this is supposed to be ancient, mythical, pre-Numenorian, kind of stuff here. So, if you look at the archetype, all the characters that are paralleling Nissa Nissa, the elf symbolism is very strong, and the Valyrian woman, first Valyrian, first Dragonlord thing is very strong. And so that has just kind of left us to go, well, there must be a confluence there. And so that's where I say, yeah, silver-haired elf with purple eyes, basically.
Well, and one of the reasons why George actually played with the idea of having Valyrians be black and have jet black hair and all of that. But he was worried that they would fall into the stereotype of like dark elves and stuff like that, which was he was kind of going for the opposite, which is why they ended up being, like sun-coated, sun.
He wanted them to look like Tolkien's elves, but act like,
right.
demons. So, yeah. That's what we got.
Like demons?
And I'm going to make a Nissa Nissa explained video in a few weeks. So we'll come back to that. More coming. In our book club today, it came up, do you think Tommen or Myrcella will die first? I could see a sand snake killing Tommen. And Myrcella is in a dangerous position right now as well. It seems like Doran is trying to keep her alive for the moment. But neither one is in a safe place. There's hardly anyone to protect Tommen in King's Landing at this point.
So the show did a very clunky job of having Tommen just,
completely different.
Hop out the window. But he did have to go. Narratively, his character had to go in order to leave a power vacuum that would be filled. So
can I just interrupt real quick? I did think it was kind of powerful because this is a potential reaction that a kid in Tommen's position might have. Like all this Cersei's malevolent parenting and then all the pressure of being king and then watching your mother murder a bunch of people under your authority, kind of like, I didn't have a hard time believing it. I thought it was very powerful. But I don't know that'll necessarily, I don't think that's something they got from George. Go ahead.
So and also Tommen is like what, 7 or 8 years old?
He's a bit younger. Yes.
In the book, kids that age don't kill themselves. Not in any meaningful note. Like that's just a very strange storyline to shoehorn in. What you're talking about with a teen, having, all the, hormones going through you, being extremely dramatic because of it, the love of your life, you think just, got murdered by your mother, you hop out a window. Like, yes, that could happen. That's believable. It's not believable with an 8-year-old. So I think
that's correct. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Good point.
I think he gets assassinated in the books. And I think into that power vacuum, Aegon steps. Because otherwise I don't think that, the entire city watch of King's Landing just flips. without any kind of problem. And
Oh,
I
that'd be
don't think
interesting
that,
if Tommen was murdered in the fall of King's Landing, kind of.
so I'm not sure how it'll happen exactly, but I do think that overnight there's basically a swap to Phagon in the same way that overnight there was a swap to Stannis from Renly to Stannis without a battle. So like in once that happens, we've said George has said we will see Casterly Rock. I think that'll be through Cersei, who escapes to Casterly Rock. And I don't think she's going to leave King's Landing if she feels like she has any avenue to power. And she
Good point.
loses her avenue to power if Tommen is dead.
That's a good point. And Palmerank 420 in the chat says, if Cersei loses her trial by combat, she is accused at this point of fornicating with Jaime. And so this would make Tommen illegitimate. And he might lose his hold on power there before he is killed, potentially. That is very possible. But she also might not lose because she does have Sir Robert Strong. That's a good point.
Well, and another thing we have to remember here is we were about to have the battle, and then some really important people just got murdered. Kevin Lannister, the Hand of the King, just got murdered. Maester Pycelle just got murdered. Like, they're not going to go about their business as if nothing happened. They're not going to just, oh, well, this was next on the docket. Let's just power through it. Like, that's pretty big. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pycelle and Kevin Lannister, we haven't seen any of the fallout of those deaths yet. And those are huge murders. Yeah. It almost, King's Landing is really starting to look like The Wall, where Jon's murder has left a big question of who's even in charge. And it's just going to be very chaotic. That's really interesting. We've been thinking about the battle at Winterfell and the battle at Meereen, but King's Landing and Castle Black have just been thrown into chaos by murders whose aftermath we have not seen yet.
Right. Well, and I don't think that there's a battle essentially in either place. And King's Landing has always been coded as very similar to the Wall, but in reverse. Like the City Watch is the reverse of the Night's Watch. They have gold cloaks, which are very sun coded, as
Correct.
opposed to black cloaks, which are very night coded. And they have, guarding the Dragon King, they have a bunch of white cloaks. It's just polar opposites.
So I need to run and get a drink and also hit the restroom. So okay. I am going to hit the music, and we'll be back in about a minute, and we will keep going because you guys have lots of questions, and I still have more from the Discord. So that's awesome. We will get to every super chat. As you can see, I can easily flip over to the list of super chats. And so, yeah, we will work our way through them in order, and we'll be right back. So let's see here. There we go. And I am back. Just me and you and the chat. Hey, folks. Hey, friends. Sean has dogs that he's taking care of. He doesn't even get to pee. He just has to go feed dogs. And then he has to come back and hold it. No, I'm kidding. I do want to say thank you, though, for all the questions. You guys are, I thought you might be enthusiastic for one of these since we haven't done one in forever. And yeah, y'all had lots of stuff. That's tasty tinfoil. Yes, that's what we traffic in here.
That must be Ion.
It is.
Figured we were in the wine portion of our stream here now.
Yeah, well, we're about to be in the more Red Bull portion of the stream. So I'm looking for a question to give you so I can run downstairs.
Okay.
Do you think it's possible that Euron could kidnap Sam during the sack of Old Town and take the horn from him? Yes, absolutely. 100% that is going to happen. That's the only reason for Sam to take that thing down to Old Town is so Euron can steal it, I think. So yeah, talk about that for a second or anything else that comes up in the chat. I'll be right back.
All right. Yeah, he's getting into the Red Bull phase. I've been in the energy drink phase the whole time. I'm run by energy drink. But yeah, the Old Town, I agree with David. It's really Sam going there with the horn. Why else would he take the horn? It is not a functional horn. It does not work. He can't blow it, right? So he's there to bring it to magically significant people, which probably ends up being Euron. It's theoretically possible it could be somebody, from House Hightower. We know that they're up there, rumored to be doing magical stuff. The Mad Maid, Melora, and Leighton Hightower, both names that imply magic. Leighton because of ley lines, Melora the Mad Maid because it's basically a reference to Arthurian mythology with Thomas Mallory being up in a tower writing Arthurian stories, Mort d'Arthur. So yeah, it's I tend to believe that. What does the horn do? Well, we know what it's implied to do because it's funny because they tried to blow it 3 times and they couldn't get a sound out of it, and then the others attacked, right? So you blow the horn 3 times for others. So yeah, Dave, they were asking what does the horn do? And I don't know what it does 100%, but we do know, first off, that it was implied to bring the others, even if that's not literal. They tried to blow it 3 times, like you do when you blow the horn for others, and they couldn't get a sound out of it. And then the others, or the whites rather, showed up. So it was, that's the implication. Euron is doing something to do with dragon magic to try to turn himself into a god or dragon rider. And it's possible the horn could be part of that. We tend to get the impression from the dragon binder horn that it's basically just enslaving people in terms of souls, and there's a little soul man running that dragon.
So I do want to do a horn video. I've had it on my list of videos for a while now. I've talked about dragon binder a bunch. So here's what I'll say. It seems like all the horns are the same horn. Like, Dragonbinder is the dragon horn, but the horn of Joramun is named after Jormungandr, who's a Norse dragon, and is associated with ending the world. Jormungandr unclenches his Ouroboros, and that lets loose Ragnarok. It's one of the many things that sets it off. Breaks the cycle of time. You can see the symbolism there. And all the horns are apocalyptic as well. The horn of Joramun is obviously apocalyptic, and waking giants in the earth is associated with the hammer of the waters, which is an apocalyptic event, might be a meteor impact. And then when we look at Dragonbinder, it could be, binding a comet dragon because it has all the symbolism of Nissa Nissa's scream that broke the moon. And this is really the way to see it. Like, if you go back and read that scene, which I've done in a lot of videos recently, I feel like I've been using my horn sound. It's basically the sound of the Dragonbinder horn is the sound of Nissa Nissa's scream. It's a shivering hot cry, a wail of anguish. It fills the world. And if Nissa Nissa's scream, quote unquote, broke the moon, then it brought the dragons. It brought them to the earth. And that's what the Dragonbinder horn is supposed to do, is to call the dragon to the to the owner of the horn. So it's hard to say if that's parallelism or if the comet was really summoned with a magic horn. Like, this is a question I've been wrestling with for years and years. Did Azor High or Bloodstone Emperor cause things to happen in the sky, or did he just see the timing of it and take advantage of what happened to gain power? It's hard to say. Either one could make sense, and it's the kind of thing where, George loves to create folklore where people take credit for stuff that just happened. Like, that's very believable also. So we'll just have to see how the next one happens, and then we'll be able to take a better guess. But the point is, all of these horns are being inspired by the same mythology, and they're sharing the same words and symbols. So it's really hard to say what horn is going to do what. But Euron has Dragonbinder, and now Sam has brought down, let's just call it the crappy Horn of Winter, the small one. And so is there a song that can be played together? Is hard to say, but it does seem like George is putting them all in the same spot for a reason.
Well, and to kind of continue painting that picture, you're talking about, the Horn of Joramun being, named for Jormungandr, who is a, primordial serpent, dragon, leviathan figure that ends the world. Jormungandr was fought by Thor, who had both a hammer and a horn. So when we talk about, the hammer of the waters, it's the world serpent. Jormungandr lives in the ocean, circles the ocean, literally in some manifestations, kind of is the ocean.
And that's why Robert and Rhaegar fight in the Trident, so that he is a water dragon. The Targaryens come from an island in the sea. They are water dragons, yeah.
Right. And like, it's even named the Trident just to put you in mind of, the weapon of a sea god, to make sure that you understand it's representing the sea, not freshwater. So it's Jormungandr and Thor, we see that all well placed because we have a guy who's nicknamed the Hornblower Tormund, which it just means Thor of the Mound. So it's, he's Thor of the Mound blowing a horn, and he does end up trying to blow a horn, right? So it's
well, and he's the one that Melisandre burns that looks exactly like Dragonbinder. That's the one I want to make the video about, really. I want to flesh out the idea that this is Great Empire of the Dawn original Dragonlord tech, or like First Man Dragonlord tech that they got from, Great Empire of the Dawn people. But yeah, I don't know what the little horn does. That's the one that's the most mysterious to me. It really reminds me of, I always make the joke, Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom when they're choosing the Grail Cup. And if you choose the fancy one, you chose poorly, you will die. It's the Carpenter's Cup because Jesus was a carpenter. And so it feels like that. Like, this is a simple old chipped horn, doesn't even work. Very humble. So we shouldn't overlook it. It's probably magical. And even the idea of a silent horn is interesting because you get like the dog whistle thing, and the others are like wolves, and the Horn of Winter, like they blew it at the Fist of the First Men, and then the others showed up. So did it call the others? Maybe. But it's at least a symbolic 1-2 punch where they came after the horn call. So
also, it wouldn't be me if I didn't point out that this was also a Lord of the Rings thing with Boromir.
Don't hold back, man. Don't hold back. Just go for it, baby.
Boromir blowing the Horn of Gondor. And it ends up summoning a king because Aragorn comes there, and then Boromir ends up dead in the river, floating in his little death raft doing a Viking funeral thing. But it's he goes into that river, and of course they have statues of all the past kings of Gondor in that river. So there's a bunch of precedent for that in A Song of Ice and Fire. Of course, Rhaegar was the crown prince. Boromir was the heir to the steward who was ruling Gondor. Rhaegar gets killed in the stream. It's a very similar idea.
Shout out to Osgiliath. Okay, so let's go back to our list of super chats. We got a surge of them. No, I want to be fan funding. So we'll get through some of these. Do appreciate the outpouring of curiosity and enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Ben in Ghost, convinced by Lost in Westeros YouTube. Again, I would say Benjen can't be in Ghost because Ghost is paired with Jon. Jon's the only one who could have Second Life in Ghost. So I don't know what the mechanics are for that. Although I don't ever want to dismiss a theory if I haven't watched the actual video or read the essay. So that's only my first impression. Do you think it's possible that Euron could kidnap? We just read that. And yes, more than possible. Is there a theory of Blackfyre having Aegon's prophecy on it? Yes, I'm the one who came up with that. We know it was George's idea, and it's been passed from king to heir. You mean the prophecy knife, or the prophecy itself, rather. We don't know that the knife was George's idea, but the idea that Aegon had that prophecy, yes, that's from George. Let's see. Maybe Aegon IV, fearing Baelor was not trueborn, did what he did in an attempt to fulfill it. By giving the sword to Daemon. I don't tend to think that we're going to find out someone like Aegon the Unworthy actually had like these loftier goals in mind. Like all of his stuff is really suggested as just corruption. So I don't tend to think so. And I think he began delegitimizing not Baelor, but rather Daeron, because Daeron opposed him politically and formed a political bloc with Aemon the Dragon Knight and Nerys, who they were the chief opposition to Aegon the Unworthy. And it's only in those latter years that we begin hearing Aegon putting out the whispers that maybe his own son isn't legitimate. So I don't think that has anything to do with the prophecy myself. We're just guessing. Sean, you have a feeling about that?
I tend to think that, both Aegon the Unworthy and Daemon Blackfyre are completely closed off from anything that is looking towards the future. Those were people who tried to seize power, essentially. And I think that's as deep as it goes. And I don't think it needs to be any deeper than that. As far as, Blackfyre having the prophecy, I'm also kind of wondering if they were meaning the prophecy dagger. I also kind of wonder if the original plan was to have that on Blackfyre, but the dagger is what they had for House of the Dragon. So hard to say. Your mic's off.
Indeed, it was. As soon as I saw the prophecy knife with the runes on House of the Dragon, one of the cooler things that they did, I immediately thought of Elric, because of course Elric has Stormbringer and also Mournblade, which are huge inspirations for Lightbringer and Dawn, the Sword of the Morning, even though it's Mourn blade because it's sad. Those are rune swords. They are black swords with demon dragon spirits, or dragons that became swords, something along those lines. An Elric person in the comments will correct me, but the point is, they're dragon swords. They are sentient, and they are black with red runes that glow when Elric uses the sword, and the sword gets excited. It burns with black fire, and the runes blaze red, and it's very cool. And it is the kind of thing that would inspire a young George Martin. And so we have Lightbringer, the burning red sword, but also Blackfyre, which would be Stormbringer. Stormbringer burns with Blackfyre. And so I used to be very, very aggressive about arguing on the Westeros forums that the real Lightbringer has to be a black sword burning red and not Dawn. And now I think I've come to say that there's probably a pair of swords that are both associated with this myth, and there probably will be a black and a white sword. But the point is, George has named the sword Blackfyre after Elric's sword, which burns with black fire, which has runes on it. Right. So yes, the idea that Aegon would have carved his prophecy in secret runes on Valyrian steel would just be George being inspired by Elric. And so I don't think it's an accident the show did that. They probably got it from George, who is planning on showing us something similar in the books. Like, I would not surprise me if Blackfyre surfaces with Fagon and we find out it's got runes on it. That would be cool. Go ahead.
So I know you never played Warcraft, but you'll like this. There's a pair of rune swords in the game. One of them is used by a paladin until it's corrupted, and it's made from a glowing black void stone is the heart of it. And it's called, and it they harness the void and it basically kills undead. It's called Ashbringer. And then the other one is a glowing blue rune blade that's used by the Lich King, this undead king, called Frostmourne. So it's they're
And
obvious.
that and most of the D&D stuff is derivative from other stuff in fantasy. So, for example, in Tolkien, we have Ringil, which is a frost cover. It's very dawn coated. Who's the guy that bears Ringil?
Ringil, that was the king of the Noldor, I believe.
Correct. He's the one that wounds Morgoth's foot
after Feanor. God, what was his name? But yeah, he dies in that duel, and they're able to take back Ringil, I believe.
Fingolfin.
That's the one. Yeah.
One of the most epic, like, losers of a duel that you can ever have, because he was fighting Morgoth, like, so out of his class, not even funny, and he wounded this guy and gave him hell and put fear in his heart. Like, yeah, Fingolfin is awesome. So he's basically wielding an icy dawn sword in that scene.
Do you think Morgoth wonders if the realm really needed him to have that foot, or if they could have stood to keep that king alive?
Dunk is Morgoth, confirmed. And then, of course, we also have very famous black swords, such as, Gurthang is the name that people would recognize, but Gurthang comes from Anglical, I believe, and Anglical is part of a twin set, Anguirel and Anglical, and those are both black meteor swords. And by the time it is Gurthang, it's definitely sentient. It's talking to Beleg, after, or talking to Turin after, right? Is it? No,
yeah,
who kills Beleg?
Beleg is Turin's best friend, and he accidentally kills him.
So it's talking to Turin and basically saying, yeah, you should take your own life, you asshole, Yeah. So, yes, I really do. I mean, at the very least, we have the black Valyrian steel swords and we have Dawn. So is there a secret original black Lightbringer sword out there? I don't know. But archetypally, he's created, Blackfyre and these other black swords, and then Dawn. So,
well, I tend to think that, like, if you look at Dawn and the fact that it's so unique, that was either how they used to make those before they had a more corrupted version that required, like blood sacrifice, or and I think you brought this up before, it would have to be like a purified version, where you've basically taken the evil and the blood out of it, and now you have a pure white version that's built all around being worthy of it, etc., which may or may not be something that George
I think that's your idea. I don't think I've said that before.
Okay. Well, either way, it's not something that I'm, pulling out of air. That's, kind of an archetype that exists and something that George might attach to. But the idea is, what would you have to do to purify that kind of evil? Like, you're killing people in order to make Valyrian steel. It requires blood sacrifice. That's all but said. And
yes, I don't see George do a lot of that. I see what George doing. He uses white to cover up rot. It's not purifying the rot. It's usually covering it up.
So yes, but also he started out with that, Sword of the Morning, with a very different idea about it, where it looked like he was trying to create another Sword of the Morning, and then he replaced it with like the whole Gerald Dane Dark Star idea. Mm-hmm. So I kind of wonder if he maybe started out where he was going to have a few characters be a little bit more like prototypical White Knights, kind of like Arthur Dane, but then drop them in an imperfect world where it's hard for them to choose right and wrong.
He does like to do that. Yes, that's a good encapsulation of one of his favorite things to do. So let's go back.
Yeah, we got a ton of chats while that was all going on.
I know. These people have questions. It's a funny thing. You turn on the camera, go live, ask people to send in their questions, and lo and behold.
So there's the Blackfyre one.
Yeah, okay. That's the one we just did. So obviously I love that question. I got excited. I got licking my chops when I saw that one coming down the pipe. This one is for Sean most. Oh, I should have done this when I went to get a drink. Can you speak to the trope of the boy who chases a knight to become his squire and then saves the world? Percival to Lancelot, then finds the Grail, and Dunk to Arlen, and Egg to Dunk. You seeing that?
Okay. Yeah, so I'll go with a few things on that. For one, that just you are describing the plot of Sword in the Stone, but it's also one thing that George has used to kind of display that is just the cycle of life. So you have the youth, the maiden, the crone. You have the youth, the warrior, the father, or the sage, I guess. Youth, father, sage, warrior, sage. They sub in for each other. But the point is, like, that's kind of the cycle. So you're a squire, you're chasing after becoming a knight, but in that, the fact that knighthood is attached to chivalry, it makes it like a benevolent pursuit. And when you go after that benevolent pursuit, and if you do it with humility, then you end up, being worthy of more. And so you end up becoming the king, like Egg, right. Arthur Sword in the Stone. So it's kind of like narrative reward. But
humility, worthiness, entitlement, commentary on those things, right?
Right. And can I see the question again real quick?
Yeah. Percival following.
Yeah, and that depends on the author of Arthur. It was Percival for a while. Later, it ended up becoming Galahad, who is Lancelot's illegitimate son. But even though he's illegitimate, he's the one who proves worthy of all the things that Lancelot is not, and he ends up becoming the Grail Knight. But it's George is he obviously has a lot of King Arthur in mind whenever he's doing this, because to him, that's the ultimate pop culture history or pop history. That's not really true, but people are fascinated with it.
So Michaelis Aldecount is talking about the Lion of Night, and you guys know how I feel about the Lion of Night. I'm always down. So let me comment on this. Michaela is saying, the Black Lion of Night is likely also a reference to the alchemical process, where it is interesting it has never reached past the first stage. So that's what's the word? It's basically where everything is dissolved so that it can be reborn anew. It's just the metaphysical version of the womb tomb concept. It's the sea of darkness where transformation happens. And that's, so the Lion of Night is a couple things. The Lion of Night, you see, in the original myth, we have the Maiden Maid of Light and the Lion of Night in some kind of balance. And then during the Long Night, the Maiden Maid of Light hides her face in shame, and the Lion of Night comes out and dominates and punishes the world with his demons. So it's a similar Negrito, putrefaction. That's it. So the idea is that just like we were saying with the seasons, there's a normal cycle that's thrown out of whack. That's the Long Night. They're explaining it differently. The way that I see Maiden Maid of Light and Lion of Night is that these are both sun ideas. There's no moon here. The moon is the pearl palanquin, I think. But the idea is that usually the lion is a solar symbol. Golden lion, golden sun. But the Lion of Night would be a son of night. And that is a concept we find in mythology, the night sun. It represents a few concepts. It can represent the night sky without the sun. It can represent the idea of the sun hiding in a cave of night, passing beneath the world, because the earth is flat, the sun moves around it, passing into the underworld, or at least appearing to, let's say that. And it also can refer to the eclipse. If you look at the solar eclipse, it's like you can see the black circle, and there's a certain phase of eclipse where it looks like a white lion's mane, rays sort of kind of wildly shooting out from around the edge. So all of these things are basically in Ice and Fire. It's easy to see why the Long Night is when the Lion of Night comes out. Like, we did have an eclipse in the language, the moon wandering too close to the sun. And then we know that the sun did hide its face. So it's kind of like, if you look at It fits with the whole cycle of seasons thing. Like death isn't bad, winter's not bad, nighttime isn't bad. It's only bad when the cycle gets stuck. You know what I mean? Like, so occasionally things in our life do need to be broken down so that something new can happen. Sometimes you get fired and then you find a better job. You get dumped or you break up with somebody and then you end up in a better relationship in a few years and you're like, oh, I'm glad I made that change. You cut a toxic friend out of your life. And it could be anything. You diet, whatever. I lost my point. What were we talking about?
Well, we're talking about the Lion of Night, and I wanted to bring up the alchemy of it because you did mention that. And the Green Lion is it's one of the biggest symbols in alchemy. It's the philosophical Mercury.
Okay. Can I?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me finish my thought, and then I'll hand it to you. So basically, all I was saying is that if your life is constantly broken down, then it becomes a wreck, right? Like periods of breakdown, occasional, a little bit of absolution or dissolution is good because it triggers a renewal. But if you're just like making mistakes over and over and your whole life is chaos and destruction, that's like the Lion of Night coming out. Like it's out of balance and it's no longer part of a healthy cycle. Go ahead.
So yeah, the Green Lion is a very prominent philosophical symbol or alchemical symbol. It's the philosophical Mercury, and the Green Lion swallows the sun. So sorry, I had this looked up. But it eats the sun for the dissolution breakdown of the sun, but it's kind of a metaphor for the dissolution of the ego, and it's something that Carl Jung latched onto in a big way. But it's also the Green Lion is associated with acid, which is very important in alchemy, and the idea it's called aqua regia, just because lions are always constantly associated with the sun and kings and stuff.
Like Regia, a burning water. Yeah, I get it.
Right. Regia means king. So aqua regia is king's water. And you actually see that concept displayed a lot. One of the ways which it was really well represented was in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, when they went to that island and the water turned things into gold, even people. And so he had like each of those like 7 lords that went to a different island, right? And one of those lords turned into a golden statue. So it's the 7 lords are all king coded. So it's a golden king in the king's water, in the aqua regia. And obviously lions figure very largely into C.S. Lewis's work. So that's and another thing that the Green Lion does is close and open the 7 seals. And when they talk about the 7 seals, it's the power of the 7 metals in alchemy, so that like they only believe in really 7 metals in alchemy, the significant metals. So this all figures very well.
Periodic table is much simpler to look at. Yeah.
So this all figures very well into George's world because he's got the faith of the 7 representing different aspects of alchemy. At least that's one of the things they represent.
Oh, okay. I never heard that, but okay.
So it's it fits very well into his idiom, where you have this, it's threaded through the faith of the 7, but it's coded for the long night. It's just, and the Green Lion swallows the sun, which if you're going to have a long night, you swallow the sun. That's kind of what happens. So
there are some I was thinking of the 6 sunflowers we see on the coat of one of Renly's Rainbow Guard right outside the tent, right before he's murdered. So he's a solar king about to be murdered. And the green light turns the sunflowers on the guy's coat, like a sickly green color.
Yeah. Turns the rainbow into just green. And which is, lion eating the sun type stuff, which is great. And there's also a 7th secret because it's not there, but it's Loris, the Knight of Flowers.
Fan funding. Okay. Thank you for the donated memberships. I saw there was a couple people that did that. What about the Boltons and the Starks being werewolves and vampires? Have you heard about that in other houses representing stuff like this? Yeah, so we've talked about that a lot on this show. And shout out to Grey Waste Tim for bringing some of this to my attention. But yeah, George has given us the truth of the Bolton secret in some of his other books, where skinning werewolves is a way to steal their power, both in Skin Trade and the recent movie with Dave Bautista and Mia Jovovich. What was that called? We read the short story on my channel, the whole thing. Lost Lands, in the Lost Lands.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so this is this ancient rivalry with the Starks and the Boltons. The Boltons are skinners and flayers. They used to flay Starks. They used to sneak into Winterfell. Yes, they were skinning Stark wargs, stealing their power, posing as Starks just like faceless men do, and sneaking into Winterfell to sack it. Check out my video called The Bolton Secret, where I talked about all of that. So yes, I have heard about that.
It's also, I think it's really fantastically done because, of course, anytime you talk about skin changers in the North, you're thinking wargs. The Boltons themselves have allied with the Warg King, among others, I believe. So it's, when you talk about the Boltons acting like vampires, but also somewhat acting like werewolves, it makes a whole lot of sense because originally those lines were blurred a lot more. And
true.
Yeah, you look at like the original Bram Stoker's Dracula. That, of course, is not where vampires were invented.
He has werewolf power. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and one of the words for him literally means werewolf. One of that the villagers call him. It means werewolf, but it also means vampire. So it's confusing, but they are meant to kind of represent the same thing.
Well, and that fits with the Boltons being as sort of stand-ins for the others, because the others are ice vampires, and they're also like a pack of wolves in the haunted forest. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and they are also sometimes stand-ins for corrupted Starks. So it all fits very well. And Bolt being in their name is not an accident. You talk about, how much have you talked about, the fire of the gods being lightning, hitting a tree, setting it on fire. It's a bolt of lightning, but a bolt is also a way you describe a little bit of wood when you shoot it at somebody, a crossbow bolt. So, yeah, it's just everything about their symbolism is very internally consistent, and it is meant to mix those two themes, werewolves and vampires.
And let's see, what was other? Oh, it's another one too. Have you heard about that and other houses representing stuff like this? Well, I mean, yeah, I've talked a lot about this. Tyrion being like the Chimera, Jon Con obviously being a Griffin, and we've compared the Starks to the Hellhound, to Cerberus. So yeah, that's all stuff we do here. Do you think it's possible that Fagon Younggriff could be the descendant of Maegor Brightflame and a Blackfyre? No, I do not. Because Tim convinced me. In fact, he basically just yelled at me until I agreed with him. And it was scary, and I don't want to do that again. So, no.
So, I mean, I guess theoretically it's possible, but like, what's really the point of that? Are we reconciling Targaryen and Blackfyre right before we wipe out Blackfyre? It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, really
I
don't think so. Egg arguably has the least role impact in the Sworn Sword out of all the three novellas. As a writer, what would you do to add season 2 to give Egg more agency, more to do? Let's think about that.
That is an interesting question.
Is that true?
I haven't thought about it. I think it is true. So I don't think he actually affects the story beyond, the scene where Dunk goes up to Lady Rohan and shows the signet ring. Basically says like, hey, he's a Targaryen. You notice that, but even that's not even Egg directly doing anything. He's just following around for vibes and snark in that one. He has a huge effect on the story in the other two.
Does he figure out that Eustace was a Blackfyre supporter?
No. So Rohan tells them.
Oh, right.
I mean, I guess he does like the reading for Dunk. That's a thing that he does. When they're looking at that contract where Darren gave the Checky water to the Webbers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he doesn't have a ton of stuff to do in it.
Or I like this from Gerald Garcia, longtime fan of the channel. I would show Egg interacting with the peasants, set the stage for his populism. Yeah, that is a good idea because they train Eustace's peasant army. So yeah, Egg could be involved in that.
Yeah, and he is a little bit. He does work with Egg and Bennis on kind of training them up a little bit. But yeah, I mean, we could really focus on the impact of that on Egg because there was a little impact. Remember, he was talking about how ignorant they were, and they don't know any of these houses, they can't read, blah blah blah. And Dunk makes the point that, like, hey, you would be just as lost in their life. Do you know how to farm watermelons? Do you know how to blah blah blah? And it's like it was kind of a point of recognition and big points for Egg, where he was like, oh yeah, you're right, I don't know anything about their life. They could teach me which plants in Watts Wood are safe to eat, blah blah blah, and I could teach them about heraldry. And it's like he's recognizing that just because they have a very different life does not mean that they're necessarily idiots or less worthy of human respect.
Yeah, I think in the Mystery Knight he pulls a similar gambit move to that he does against Arion in the first book. There isn't quite a moment like that in the second book, but yeah, I think that's a good suggestion by Gerald Garcia there.
Yeah. He also assembles a lot of the knights that fight for Dunk, so that's a big one too. But yeah, he affected the plot in huge ways in 1 and 3. Like a main plot driver. In number 2, not so much. But that may be intentional by George, like part of Egg's arc is that he is an egg that hasn't hatched yet, and he hatches at White Walls. So we're going to see him be a little more dragony in the future. But that was kind of the point. Maybe the egg is just growing and learning. It hasn't, become a dragon yet in the second novella.
I'm being told I missed a super chat. I'm just going back through.
If anyone can mention which one, that would help.
Well, he said his name.
Okay.
I didn't see it, though.
Bummer.
Oh, here it is. In the next 2 books, do you want all your questions answered, or do you still want the same things, some things left to imagination? So, yeah, I've been looking at this question all day, trying to get to it, actually. That is a good one. I am kind of cool with whatever George does, really. I'm very deferential to, like, the person telling the story with any sort of storytelling. So a lot with my theories, I get to a certain point, and then I kind of like present several options. Say, oh, it could be this or it could be that, because I don't want to overly try to pin down his story when I'm not. It's not my story to write. I'm just trying to look at the foreshadowing and guess where it might go. And there's usually several things that could make sense. So I do think we'll get a fair amount of stuff confirmed because the ancient past is going to echo the future. So however the new long night is caused is going to tell us how the first one was caused. What Jon does with whatever magic swords is going to tell us what the last hero did. Stuff like that. The fixing of the problem of the others will reveal to us how the problem got started. And obviously Bran seeing stuff in the Weirwood net is another tool for exposition. Like, if the long night was caused by falling stars, that's something he could see. When he goes back far enough, right before it actually happens, literally on the page, he could see something like that. And then Dany's messing around with glass candles that Marwyn the Mage is probably going to be bringing, so she can find ancient information. Remember, the fake Undying that sort of passed themselves off as Dany's Dragonlord ancestors are like, we sent the comet to show you the way. Like, the idea is kicking in George's head that the Gemstone Emperors, these ancient Dragonlord spirits, they might have info for Dany about the ancient past and stuff like that. Why are you smiling so broadly?
Oh no, I agree. I think that is how George presents his information. I just love it every time the Undying are brought up because they're perfect. It's a perfect encapsulation of how we're supposed to look at this. These people are dressed like Lannisters and they present themselves as Dany's ancestors. They're magicians, they're magical, they sent the comet, they're implied as dragon lords. But then they really end up being like the others. And that's telling us so much information without telling us anything. And that's George's style. He's not going to outright confirm everything. If he wants you to know something, he will present evidence for it in the eyes of his point of view characters. He's not going to have some maester write it down as fact and hand it to you. That's just not how it's going to work. And that's perfect. We don't want George to drastically change his writing style in the last two books. We want to leave some things to imagination and interpretation so that, we can talk about it the same way that we've enjoyed talking about it for the last way too long. Please hurry up, George. But yeah, I mean, I'm still writing essays interpreting things that J.R.R. Tolkien wrote in the 40s. So it's not, we don't want every question answered. Like Dave said, we're deferential to how George is going to write it, but also based on the fact that we like the way George has been writing.
Anybody know the Alexandria podcast with Mark Brahman? I've not heard of that one, but I'll check it out. Thanks for the rec.
What's it about?
Let's see.
Sounds like a history podcast.
And I read a post condemning Egg for not stopping Rhaella and Aerys' marriage, but I saw them also condemn Dunk. What could Dunk? Dunk doesn't have anything to do with who marries who in the Targaryen family. And, when the Wood Witch gives the prophecy, I think you just got to go with that because everyone in that family believes with prophecy. It was Jaehaerys II who did that, though. So Egg would have had to step in and try to overrule his son in that instance, I guess. I don't know. Not sure. We just don't know. We could only speculate. We don't have that information, basically. So Ben, getting back to the list here, Ben says, what do you think is the best unsolved mystery in A Song of Ice and Fire, and what do you think the answer is?
That's wrong.
Like plot mystery. To me, it's Ashara Dane. Just what? What is she doing? Who's the father of her kid? She's probably not dead, but where is she? What's going on with that? Was she originally supposed to be that surrogate mother for Rhaegar's third kid, and then he had a dream and it became Lyanna? Was somebody in the chat earlier said, I think Ashara's baby was Rhaegar's too, and that Rhaegar was, planting seeds in multiple. Sorry, that metaphor got gross. You understand what I'm saying. So yeah, that's my answer. Ashara Dane.
I agree, and not just because,
well, you can agree, but come up with one yourself. Go ahead.
I will come up with one myself, and I'm not saying it's, it's because of Arthur stuff, King Arthur stuff, but yes, they've given us plenty of room to speculate, but very little actual information, except that what we have been told can't be correct. So if I'm going to come up with a mystery, I think the motives of some of the magical characters are kind of mysterious. We don't 100% know the motives and what's going on with Quaithe. I'm not big on the secret identity Quaithe theories. I don't think it matters really who Quaithe is. I think what matters is that she's powerfully magical. She's showing us a number of things that magical people can do, and we don't know what her motives are. So I think Quaithe is a huge, important mystery. Marwyn for similar reasons, although we've actually got him a little bit more fleshed out, I would say, than Quaithe. Not in his abilities, but in his motives. He's been a little bit more transparent. But I'm still very interested to see what Marwyn does. And I'm very interested to see what happens with Quaithe. Those are two very big, interesting plot lines for me, along with the others themselves.
Yeah, the magic horns are up there too. We talked about them already, but what do they do? What are they going to do? But yeah, unsolved mystery. I feel like the Ashara Dane fits, and she very well may be Howland Reed's wife. I love that theory. I think it's very compelling, but it still leaves us questions. You know, why is Mira a Dane? Like, why does that matter? And how did that story end? Who was the father of the kid? How did she get to the swamp after jumping out of the tower? You know, there's definitely some holes there.
Well,
Yeah.
she just met Tana Merriweather.
That's how you get to the swamp, right? Let's see. What is your favorite bit of Tim foil? Well, my favorite Tim foil is I really like the Bloodraven and Danelle Lawston were a thing. They're the parents of Melisandre. I like that theory. And he's got something cooking with one of Bloodraven's sisters and the Greyjoys. And I don't even want to. He said it on a stream a few weeks ago, and I'm just waiting to hear more about that.
I think my favorite bit of tinfoil is not really even tinfoil. I think it's just he's clocked a couple of thematic resonances very, very well. One of them was when he basically outlined the whole plot of the Forsaken to the Sound of Silence. That was definitely what was going on there, I think, beyond any doubt. And he did a good job of mapping that out. Another one is the Godfather influences that he was pushing in Dorne. I think those were both very well done.
Yeah, Tim's blown my mind on just many, many times. It's hard to remember. Like we kind of put that thing together with the phrase with Rickon and bringing the Skagosi down to like trigger the fall of House Frey based on the Billy Goat's gruff. Like that was some shit right there.
Yeah. And well, and like when you get into action, I don't think either of mine were really tinfoil. I think they were just, he's looking at influences for George and clocking them pretty well. When you look at it, the actual tinfoil, I'm never concerned about whether it's really literally happening or not. I'm concerned about the symbolic importance and then how that will end up feeding into George's little blueprint or algorithm or whatever you want to call his recipe, where he has kind of fit everything into a cycle that repeats with archetypes.
So thanks for mentioning Tim's Godfather stuff. So we're talking about Grey Waste Tim. You can find his channel by searching Grey Waste Tim, and you got to watch his A Song of Oranges and something. I forget what it's called, but yeah, you'll be able to tell which video it is. It's brilliant. It's extensive Godfather. I see the people in the chat are like, oh, the oranges, Doran Martell. Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah. Orange slices, no longer just for after youth soccer games. Now they are for the Godfather references.
They're well past ripe, just like Doran's plans. There you go. Yeah, if one of the mods could drop the link, that'd be cool in the chat. But just look up Grey Waste Tim, and you'll find it.
And like whenever he says something like that, I start seeing it everywhere and I start seeing more of it. But yeah, it was like definitely, Doran Martell being obsessed with the water gardens, watching the children is a lot like the Godfather in the garden with his orange slices playing with the kids. And of course, they're both going to die there.
Right. Yeah. Well, Doran doesn't move around too much, so only a couple places he could die.
A little bit of a homebody, isn't he?
A little bit. So Upbeat Paradiso strikes again. What's your hottest take about the story, and why do you believe it to be true? I don't even know what's a hot take anymore. It's been 15 years.
Yeah, you got to theorize so much. If you can't sell yourself on your own hot takes, then why would you even post them, right?
Yeah, everything I say is very reasonable.
Yeah, that's what I said in the comments in the last video. Is like all our takes are lukewarm and factual. There are no hot takes. There are plenty of hot takes. Oh, I know what my hottest take is. It's that George changed his plans for the Danes. That he was originally planning on having Edric Dane be the Sword of the Morning, and that he basically changed their whole plot line around when the 5-year gap happened.
That's not a hot take.
Well, my hot take is that he left clues to this because he was pissed off that he had to abandon the storyline, in the same way that Tolkien has done kind of the same thing, where he left clues to a dropped storyline. But yeah, where he does the whole, imagine that Edric Dane is secretly Ned and Ashara's baby. He would be a bastard masquerading as a legitimate heir to House Dane.
Mm-hmm.
And then he becomes the white sword, the sword of the morning. It's a complete foil to Jon, who is
right,
a legitimate masquerading as a bastard, and becomes a black sword and has a black Valyrian steel sword. So it's essentially reverses. And
so now we got Fagon doing similar thing.
Right. But it's echoed in scenes like Arya meets Edric and he says, like, I'm milk brothers with your bastard brother. And it's like, first off, he's not a bastard. Jon wouldn't be a bastard. It would be Edric Dane who's the bastard. So it's kind of reversed. But yeah, the milk connection is very interesting. And it works well with the whole idea of, like, you split a sword into the white and black. You have two babies or twins, and they end up being polar opposites of each other. It's like splitting the comet. It's how you get your Oathbreaker and your Widow's Wail. Or Oathkeeper, sorry, and Widow's Wail, not Oathbreaker. That's blasphemous.
I think one of the things that the couple of my theories that have sort of met with the most resistance is Jon being whited, Jon being possessed by the others, even though there's just a shit ton of symbolism for it. Like, people struggle with that for some reason. And let's see, like I said, it's hard for me to say which one of my takes are actually, like, controversial, but that's definitely one of them.
See,
if I think of something else that comes back to me, I will add it.
When I think of the takes that
Ghost dying, yeah, that's true. That's true.
I'm sorry, I still think Ghost is going to die, but
no, he is. He is.
What? You made a whole video about Ghost is going to live.
No, he's going to be fire whited.
Oh, okay. No, I'll get on board. Yeah, I remember. Okay.
He's got to die first.
I'm caught up. Yes.
No, the fact that Gerald Hightower, the White Bull, dies at Jon's birth is like, yeah, we're going to need another White Bull for Jon's rebirth, and that's obviously Ghost. So yeah, sorry.
Oh, and you know what I like a lot is dying at around the same time as Monster replacing Aemon Battleborn. So basically him becoming a king, kind of like Jon is supposed to be a king. Monster becomes Aemon Battleborn when they do the baby swap, basically. And Blackjack Bulwer gets his head on the pike in the same chapter. So it's like sacrificing a bull person for the Mithras figure. It's perfect.
There you go. All right. What's your hot... Okay, so let's see. Nate has 3 questions about the God's Eye. Could we see Dany and Euron having a dragon fight over the God's Eye? Yep. Could be Jon and Euron as well. Hard to say. Also, is the God's Eye the power source for the barrier at the wall, helping keep the barrier going? I think that's like the whole Weirwood net. Like, if anything is the power source for the wall's magic, it's all the blood sacrifice, probably. Michael talks about stuff, definitely has a lot of videos about that. Lastly, and then I did one with Michael called the Weirwood System on this channel, where we got into it. Could the God's Eye be a potential site for a moon meteor as it is likely shaped like a target? Well, more people have wondered if it was an original meteor strike and a crater lake situation, because it looks like one. But that doesn't really match with the timing, because it takes thousands of years for those islands, the crater to cool and to fill with water and become a lake. And there's stuff happening on the Isle of Faces seemingly around, in the Dawn Age. So if it was made by a meteor strike, it would have been a much older one. Or I guess it could just be that the legends became moved over there and George is fudging the time and stuff. But to me, George throws an awful lot of dragons into that lake. So The symbolism is there. Go ahead.
Only death can pay for life. We're sacrificing dragons, and it's like at some point you've thrown enough pennies in the fountain, you're gonna get results. But to me, the real Crater Lake ends up being invaded by the sea, and that's at the Iron Islands. And so the sea rushing in and the whole tsunami thing happening and being mythologized as a water dragon and like that all just fits. Like there was a meteor that came down there in what is now Iron Man's Bay somewhere. There was a volcano that exploded because the meteor came down, because that's what happens to volcanoes when meteors come within 10,000 miles of them. And it was all just very cataclysmic end of the world type stuff, which is what the Long Night was. It's basically portrayed as Ragnarok, and we're about to have another Ragnarok, which is also meant to be cyclical. So that's basically a crater lake. If the crater lake happened too close to the ocean and seawater invades, which of course seawater in terms of, more ancient societies, it's just poison water. You can't drink it, so it's just poison water.
That does make it poisonous.
It kills all your crops, all that kind of stuff.
And just to get back to this whole dragon fight over the God's Eye thing, I don't think it has to be recreated, because so much of that is really pointing towards the symbolism of Azor Ahai going into the Weirwood Net and stuff like that. But obviously there's a lot of foreshadowing that Viserion will be stolen. I mean, the whole point of doing that is to have two of the dragons fight. And really, you could say the fact that Dany has all three dragons in and of itself suggests that one of them must be stolen, because how else are we going to have a dragon fight? And what's the point of throwing all these dragons in the story if they're not going to fight each other? I mean, he wrote Fire and Blood to show us a whole bunch of dragon fights so that we would know what it was like. And so, yeah.
We have assembled for hot dragon on dragon action, and we better get it. Living, dead, nobody cares. But what's the name of the village where they do the trading beyond the wall that got destroyed? It's the subject of all the conspiracy theories.
Hardhome.
Hardhome. Okay. I'm always looking at, I'm not getting anything right now. I have nothing to contribute, but I'm always like trying to remember and looking at linguistic roots to try to find a commonality. I was trying to see if maybe there might be like a dragon fight over Hardhome or something, but I think it has to just happen somewhere beyond the wall, in a lake beyond the wall.
It depends on if Euron steals it with Dragonhorn sorcery or by ice magic whiting type thing. If it's a whiting type thing, it'll be in the north. But if it is stolen by the Dragonbinder horn, it could be anywhere. So that would be cool. I don't know. It almost might be heavy-handed, honestly, if he recreated the dragon fight over the God's Eye. I don't think he will, now that I think about it. I don't think he will.
No, for one, because that was basically the end. Like everything else that happened after that fight was basically just resolving politics. They had that fight on the King's Road where all of the Tullys and those armies came out of the woods, and it was always, it's very demonstrative of green men coming out of the woods to fight but anyway, the Baratheon dies there, and that's the end of the war. But really the war ended when Daemon and Aemond both died over the God's Eye. Like the serious climactic battle was that, because they had no answer to Aemond and Vhagar, and then they're dead, and they had to sacrifice for it. But anyway, it's so that
I really think George wrote that whole battle to tell us about Azor Ahai going into the Weirwood Net and stuff. I really think that's what it is.
Yes. And it couldn't be more heavy-handed with cutting somebody off from the Weirwood Net, right? Like you talk about Bran burning down the Weirwood Net in order to resolve the story. Now the others can no longer use it. Nobody can use it. We've cut off that unnatural power in order to resolve the cycle of seasons. That makes a lot of sense. If you want to talk about, removing the power of going into the werewood net or using that communication, blah, blah, blah. You talk about removing someone's third eye, or in, Aemon's case, the star sapphire blue eye that was like an other eye that he had that got stabbed out by a magic sword as they landed in the god's eye. Like it's pretty heavy
swords. Yeah, it's more it's the second best fractal symbolism in the story after the cat's paw scene.
Yeah.
Which is like a Russian nesting doll.
The cat's paw scene is just being a troll. Like it's too much. It's overdone and it's funny.
It's great that was in the first book. It was just like, let me see how hard I could do this. And if you don't know what we're talking about, just to give you an idea, Cat Stark has her hand cut by the cat's paw assassin. And then she bites his paw, but she's a cat, so that's a cat biting the paw. Like
and the cat paw himself was sent by Joffrey, who's a lion, and he gave him a dagger that has a lion hilt on it. So a cat's paw injured the cat's paw, and the cat's paw, as the cat's paw bits the cat's paw. So it's way too much.
Rock the cat's paw. Rock the cat's paw.
But yeah, so I explained that whole thing in my video for the Doom on the Iron Islands, because the whole, like, the meteor coming down with the, meteor dagger there. And then there's a blood rain when the wolf bites out his throat. There's a blood rain. So it ends up being like meteor blood rain coming down, but it's also a symbolic or it's a more accurate connection to the Valyrian steel sword, blood rain. So there's a whole thing there.
I just like that we're talking about a scene with cat symbolism involving the Starks. And you're like, yeah, I talked about that in my Iron Islands Lord of the Rings video, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, and like you brought up the scene earlier where he's pantomiming the moon destruction and he's talking about doom and darkness. He's doing Lord of the Rings stuff. It's Mount Doom, and it's the darkness that's because there's debris in the air all over Mordor blocking the sun. So it's just like, yeah, and it's because of a volcano. The ash coming from a volcano.
Aegon the Fourth era in a reality show style.
Oh God.
It's like Bittersteel in the confessional closet, griping about Bloodraven and Shara Seastar.
That would be good. I also want to see Aegon the Fourth handing out roses to women who are visibly uncomfortable.
Why?
I don't know, because he dies in the end, and that'll make us all feel better. I don't know.
I do think that's a huge one to go for. We've talked about that before. It's a great era to do.
He would be dysfunctional enough for reality show to thrive there.
So next question, do you think the seven are real or the old gods? Why do you think we see real magic associated with some gods but not others? So I don't think there are classic deities as you might think of them. We have talked about this. There does seem to be Lovecraftian intelligences from outer space that hitched a ride to Planetos. That's what I think R'hllor is. So check out the Shadowbinders video for that story. It could be what the Great Other is. I think the Great Other is the spirit of Azor Ahai in the Weirwood Net. And the old gods are obviously the spirit of Green Seers. So we know the old gods are real in the sense they are the spirits of Green Seers in the Weirwood Net. And so no, the seven are not real. The seven are archetypes. But George is using the seven to show us the real power of archetypes. Like, they are powerful. We see them affect many people in the story in many moments. So when you talk about Dunk being resurrected, some of what helps him find the strength to get up is this thought of being a true knight and not quitting. And like, that's the power of the archetype inspiring him. And all of the stuff about knighthood and the warrior, like, could be tied to that. The best example is Sansa singing the hymn of the mother and being the first person to address the 6-year-old wounded child inside of Sandor's burn. Nobody's ever felt sorry for him about that. And Sansa channels the energy of the mother and it touches Sandor so deeply that he just completely changes what he was going to do, and leaves, and leaves his cloak with her, instead of R-wording her, which seems to be what he came to do. So this is, we see it with Sam and Gilly, and we see it in Kat's story. You want to say anything about this?
Just that it's kind of seems to be George R. R. Martin's version of what we now basically have minimized to Wicca. So like it's called Wicca now, but basically Wicca is under an umbrella of what used to just be kind of how people viewed the world. And it was just, a people who we now consider pagan, but before Christianity in Europe, basically arranging their lives around these archetypes where you had the youth, male or female, you had the mother, the father, you had the sage, the crone, like blah, blah. And so those are all kind of represented. They're kind of shuffled around, and, you have the warrior added because it's a very martial culture. It fits there well. You have the stranger, which is basically just a proxy for death. And the blacksmith, which is also obviously big in a martial culture. But the idea is still the same. Like you've removed the two youths, and in place of them, you put, other archetypes that make sense in this world. But it's, again, just George messing with archetypes.
So, yeah, and he did combine Wicca and Catholicism a little bit. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
Because the organism of the faith of the seven, it feels like Catholicism. There is a central church in Old Town. It's like the papacy. Then, you have priests and septons. You have, nuns and septas. The Silent Sisters is a little bit more brutal and graphic than what you're going to see in Catholicism visually, but
it's important to realize the idea of a triple goddess is much older than Wicca. The maiden mother crone thing, that's really old. It's seemingly a proto-Indo-European concept. So
it's just life. It's just,
exactly
how we looked at ourselves. Yeah. There are the three phases. You're learning, you're a child, then you become an adult, and now you're kind of past your prime.
First you are a child, then you make children, and then you yell at children.
Yeah, good. And I, I didn't make any children, but, I yell at kids all day. I coach basketball. I yell at them all the time.
Will there be a video on demand of the stream? Yeah, you can rewatch the stream as soon as it's over. That's always like that here.
Look under the live tab in his on his YouTube channel. You will see all of the streams.
Yes, under the live tab, exactly. What do you think or want the end game of the Targaryen line and or the dragons to be? I really do see a no magic ending coming. I've been kind of locked onto that for a while. I don't really see anything. I mean, there hasn't been a new book in a while, so yeah, I don't think there'll be any dragons or others at the end. And as far as the Targaryen dynasty was only ever formed to fight the others. So after they do that, their mission is done. So yeah, it doesn't make sense to reestablish a dynasty. I do think we'll get a little move in the direction of democracy, even though they laughed at Sam when he said that on the show. I think that is exactly the way it's going. So yeah.
Yeah.
What is your favorite song in the series, and why is it the Dornishman's Wife? Because the Dornishman's Wife song is sung by Mance Rayder, because it has the black blade in it, and it's about the Dornishman with a black blade. So I feel like this is Great Empire of the Dawn stuff. Its bite is sharp and cold as a leech, which brings us to Ned's black sword Ice, which is sharp and cold and has a bite, and it ties into Craster's axe and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, Dornishman's Wife, great symbolism. Bear and the Maiden Fair, pretty strong too. I made a video about Bear and the Maiden Fair, and that's about Cunnilingus, and that's kind of cool. So hard to say. Those are both good contenders. What other songs do we have?
My favorite is Jenny of Oldstones, because I just think it's the best symbolism. But if you want to talk about a black blade that is cold and sharp as a leech, you're talking about the Boltons for one, like the Leech Lord, and them being very ice coated Night's King people, and his chips of ice eyes and all that. Yeah. But Jenny of Old Stones, I think the difference is Jenny of Old Stones is essentially pantomiming the end game, which we haven't seen yet. So it's harder to contextualize Jenny of Old Stones because it's so much about the Night's Queen and the others. And so it's hard to really we can see all of the Dornishman's Wife play out. We can see all of the Bear and the Maiden Fair play out. But every single song he's ever written, even the ones we only have a couple lyrics for, they're all very symbolic.
Yeah, I really like how the Bear and the Maiden Fair is echoed in Jaime and Brienne's story and a couple other people's story. It's really well done.
Dunks.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Right, be right.
Anything Brienne is bound to echo in Dunk. There's a lot of parallels there. Our guy, David Lightbringer, uses lots of quotations in his video. He sure does. I've only read the books once, and I've read the novellas and everything else once. Are all those quotations he uses from those books? Yes. Is there ever some other source he uses? No. Nope. The 5 published books, World of Ice and Fire, Fire and Blood, and the 3 Duncan Eggs. That's what we got. If I'm quoting George, then I'll tell you that, basically. If we were to see the Corlys show come to life, which voyage would you want to see the most and why? Well, I want to see a Shy and Yi Ti, Rudy Wild. Good question. I'm pretty much here for that whole thing, though. I have enthusiasm for seeing anything mysterious from the East. It's all good. But obviously, yeah, going to a Shy. That's the obvious one. But I would like to see those 1,000 islands and stuff too, though. That'd be cool. That's what I'm saying. What a great show that's going to be. Do you think a 10,000 Ships series will take us into Valyria, perhaps a Dragonlord family character POV? Yeah, so the great thing about Nymeria's journey, the 10,000 Ships thing, is that every season is kind of in a different setting. So season 1 is like the building tension with Valyria, with the Rhoynish and the Valyrians living alongside each other along the river, and it culminates with the decisive battle where they send 300 dragons, and it's the downfall of Garen the Great and all that. And then you have the flight begin, and they're sailing across the sea and escaping. They get to Sothorios, they get to the Summer Islands, and they eventually get to Dorne. So it just seems like you do one season in each location. And the first one would start with dragons and Valyrians, which would be interesting to have them in the first season. And probably not as any POV characters, because we're going to move away from them. Unless you're going to say, well, there was one Valyrian who went with Nymeria for some reason. Because there's always crossed lines and things. Maybe there's some abolitionists, Aenar's ancestors. So yeah, I guess that would be the scenario. But mostly if it were me, I'd probably think to make the Valyrians the antagonists there and keep our perspective with the Rhoynar.
Also, you've kind of been jumping on the same theme here. Like when you talk about the 1,000 islands, up in the north, right? It's like 1,000 dragons. You talk about meteors landing in the ocean. That's what a bunch of islands are portraying, meteors landing in the ocean. And then you have, Nymeria's 1,000 ships, a bunch of, in the ocean. And it's not really 1,000 ships. He's very careful to say that it probably wasn't actually 1,000 ships. But allegorically, it's 1,000 ships. And then you have, similar things happening with cartoonishly large numbers when the Valyrians are fighting the Rhoynar, right? And they do it, of course, they're fighting a dragon on a river, because of course they are. Except this time, the dragon wins.
Yeah, there's so many good moon meteor metaphors. My favorite one that are islands are still Drogon's black and burned, like a chain of gray islands in the Dothraki Sea. Yeah. Those little burn marks. It's between that and Aegon the Conqueror landing on the Iron Islands to slay Corn Volmark. I don't know how much more evidence you need of a meteor strike on the Iron Islands.
Oh, and who is Rhaena's girlfriend from Fair Isle? What was her name?
Alyssa
She
Farman.
Sun Chaser. So when she goes on Sun Chaser with what's his name, Hightower, and Hightower turns back like a wuss, they found those 3 islands and named them after the conquerors, Aegon, Rhaenys, and Visenya.
More dragon islands.
Yeah.
In the sea.
And of course, like Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters were always portrayed as meteors. Even the place where they, made their city, the first place they landed, they call it King's Landing.
Yeah.
And it's, a big hill and then a crater site. So it's like, it's
the dragon pit is the best. The dragon pit is the best.
Yeah, I mean, we had a whole stream about the symbolism of King's Landing, but yes, it is
we did that one. That was a big one. Gosh.
Yeah. The short of it is that yes, it's doing sun and 2 moon things with, of course, a comet impact.
Yeah, Dreamfire, like the dragon inside of the egg trying to hatch out of the moon. That's a great one. Mimir asks, will we see how Valyria binds their dragon riding families to their dragons using blood magic, fire magic, or something similar in the Winds of Winter? The answer would be Euron and Victarion. If Victarion uses the dragon binder horn, or Euron uses Victarion to use the dragon binder horn, they're all using each other, then we'll see a new dragon line established and a new dragon bond established. So that's probably how we'd see that.
Right. We're not going to see it literally. We're going to see it in a symbolic parallel. That's just how George works. He's never going to give us outright confirmation of details like that. The mystery is the point, but he'll give us hints. And I've gone into the etymology of words a lot, but Targaryen it means sun spear tree. So it's like Gungnir, like Odin's spear that is made from the heart of the sun with the wood of the world tree. So it is a sun spear tree. Targaryen. Tar means tree. And that's taken straight from Tolkien. So when you look at Victarion, he has tar, meaning either across the sea or tree. And he has now crossed the sea to get to the, dragon princess. And he's portraying a king. He did try to become king at the King's Moot. And then he's got the IO suffix, which every time we've seen moon characters with IO in their name, they're portraying Fire Moon. And of course, he has the fiery hand. Every time you see, the EUR, you're doing Europa, which is Ice Moon. So Euron and Victarion are the opposite ends of the gamut here, and one is going to enslave the other. The Ice Moon figure is going to enslave him because that's what others do. They enslave people. So we'll see it in symbolic parallel. We'll see it probably in Euron and Victarion, in an unwilling dragon and a dragon rider who ends up getting possessed. And it'll be messy, but that's going to be the confirmation we see.
So that's what he's talking about. Gar is meaning spear.
Yes. Yen, sun, tar, tree, gar, spear. Sun, spear, tree. And there are other translations for all of those words, and they're essentially, stacking up 3 meanings for each. But that being one of the reasons, it's very obvious, especially when you see how many times, more the Targaryens have married into the Martells of Sunspear than any other house.
And so just to explain something to the chat there, yes, Targaryen is likely derived from Aryan. There's no question. I mean, it's impossible that it's not when you look at their race supremacy and stuff. They are like the Third Reich with dragons in many ways. They're also like Atlantis, and they're also like the Roman Empire, and there's a few other things. But see, what George does is once he has something locked in, like Valyrian or whatever, he then riffs off of it. So he noticed, Valar. Well, that's the name of the gods in Tolkien. And so he translates that into the name of Baelor's kid and Valar Dohaeris and all stuff like that. So yeah, he starts in one corner, but then grabs all the confluences and sort of gathers them together. So he might, as he's putting together this word, Valyrian and Targaryen, he's breaking down the bits and constructing the word based on the meaning of the bits. That just seems to be the pattern that he does. Like Ygritte is Ig right, as in the tree Ig. And then Jon has a dream of her essentially performing a blood sacrifice to the weirwood tree, which would be the stand-in for Ig. So this is an Ig ritual, an Ig rite that she's showing us.
She goes into the pool at the base of a weirwood tree in essentially the same way that there's a pool beneath Yggdrasil. And, Odin goes in it and a number of other things go in it, or he puts his eye in it. But the point is like, this is just symbolic confirmation of how Nissa Nissa goes into the weirwood net, how she becomes a part of it or becomes it. So again, we're only going to see the symbolic confirmations. George is never going to explain his magic to us.
I mean, he'll show it to us, but he won't explain it. So I think right. We'll see some pretty interesting confirmation of stuff. I'm generally a little more optimistic. Some people tend to think, oh, none of this is ever going to be confirmed. Well, not explained outright, but we're definitely going to get some answers, I feel like. For those who know how to see.
RLJ has not been confirmed yet, and it might be, but it hasn't been confirmed yet. We don't need it confirmed. It's a thing.
Yeah, that is how I read the story as well. Same thing with like Dunk not being knighted. Like that was already 100% for me. So
Dunk looked down at his shoes. No one else was like to knight me.
Case closed. Yeah. I love to think about how the personality of dragons are a strange mix of human and beast's nature and instincts. I like to think it's very dueling, clashing. If dragons aren't natural but man-made, could blood magic be a curse and can it be broken? I'd like to think if any of Dany's dragons do survive in A Dream of Spring, that maybe they'll just be wild and not be bound to any human family ever again. That'd be nice. That'd be sweet. I don't think so. I tend to think we're, like I said, a no magic ending, but that would be cool. I get it.
I have to agree with the no magic ending, and it's because there has been outrageous precedent set everywhere for it. A huge amount of our fantasy genre is based on Beowulf, and the entire point of Beowulf at the end, they say the age of heroes has ended. There are no more monsters or heroes. Humans are just humans now, and there's nothing supernatural in the world. And it's how they could kind of resolve Beowulf with now the world is Christian, because the people who wrote down Beowulf for us were Christian monks or a Christian monk. So Tolkien ran with that, and his whole thing is the world has become progressively less magical. The elves have to leave it. Gandalf has to leave it. Everybody who's been connected with magic, Bilbo, Frodo, has to leave it.
Yep.
So it's going to be the same in George's world, because magic is essentially a power multiplier, and it creates power dynamics that are unsustainable. Dragons are not fair. They're flying nukes. You burn down an entire kingdom. That's brutal. Same thing with the others. You're enslaving dead people. That is a power multiplier or a force multiplier. And it's not in an egalitarian world. It's not possible. So those things all have to go in order for the world to progress forward and for these cycles of violence to be resolved.
Well said. Well said. Perfect answer. And I will also just say that we're at 3.5 hours in, and I got to go. So let me get through these last questions real quick, and then we'll wrap this up. Is Sir Arthur Dayne dead? Yes. There's not room for him in the story. That's also why Rhaegar is dead, and many other people. There's just not room. Brienne and Cleo's Frey escaping, and Jaime by chucking a rock into the river. Is this telling us about attempts to change the course of the River of Time by chucking moon meteors in it, or what? That's an interesting interpretation. Kinda. Probably so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a giant rock being thrown downwards into a body of water that creates a whole bunch of extra problems for people. Yeah. There's
it's as big as a cow, too, so it's definitely a moon rock.
Yeah. There's a Sun King who's being held prisoner in that scene, and they're deciding who holds him prisoner. That's Azor Ahai in the Weirwood Net. Like in Cleo's Frey, Cleos means key. Cleo means key in French. So it's like the key to the Weirwood Net. Oak and iron, guard me well, or else I'm dead and doomed to hell. And of course, the Weirwood Net is often analogized as an oak and iron prison cell with.
Oh, that's why he's killed. He's he's basically hung from his horse. So it's
Yeah,
very Odin like.
right.
Yeah. Interesting. Good answer.
The horse is how you traverse the werewood net, the Slipnir horse, the 8-legged horse. Yeah.
So that was the sacrifice. Yeah. Well, so then this is what I mean by there are a lot of clues that seem to show us that Azor Ahai did cause somebody caused this to happen. It does seem like that.
Well, and that's the thing is Brienne is sometimes portraying the Azor Ahai bit, just as Jaime is. They swap roles with the Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa sometimes.
Well, she is got the Morning Star Even Star thing. So she was a rising star, and then she kicked a star out of heaven and it fell to earth, kind of. So that was the whole thing right there. And then she dove back in. Let's see. Salome says, what do you think of the symbolism of Shireen and connections to Hel, Loki's ugly little girl in Norse mythology? I got to ask you about that one. I don't really know about that.
Which ugly little girl are you talking about? Hela, the goddess of hell.
Yes.
It's. I mean, that would make sense because Hela is sometimes talked about as being like disfigured in the face, which would make sense with Shireen. And Loki is unfairly blamed for Ragnarok a lot, even though it's really more like Odin and a number of other people. But yeah, I could see that being one of the influences for it. One of the other really obvious influences for it is sirens. So like, Shireen being on an island in the ocean, and luring people in, like, unfortunately, she lured in the wrong people. She lured in the people who eventually gave her grayscale, and that's unfortunate. But there's that. There's also the fact that the Shire is in her name, and her character arc being resolved, and it is when large character arcs resolve and the smaller story arcs are kind of left on the back burner. That's something that George refers to as the scourging of the Shire. So Stannis's march succeeds or fails, and then he has to deal with the fact that his daughter has been murdered. That's kind of like, Aragorn's tax code type stuff. So
somebody else is mentioning Iphigenia, daughter of Agamemnon. That's a classic comparison.
Someone made that comparison besides us. Somebody made a video about that, comparing them in the Iliad and the other two.
I remember somebody pointing that out on the forum like a decade ago. So that's definitely a classic observation. Yeah, and then Rudy Wild again, is Jon Con going to flip to Jon Snow when he finds out Fagon is a Blackfyre and that Rhaegar actually has a kid named Jon? We've talked about all of that except for the last bit, so I had to include that. That'll be funny.
Oh, that poor bastard. He named him after me. And it's like, oh no, it turns out Ned Stark named him, and he named him after
Jon Arryn. Yeah, sorry.
But that is a great common thread that Jon Snow was named for Jon Arryn, Ned's foster daddy. And then we have Aegon going by Lil Griff for his foster daddy, whose name also happens to be Jon.
Yeah, here's another one for you. His mom, Fagon's mom, is Sarah Blackfyre, and her hands are now, she got grayscale, and so Illyrio has her stone hands in a box. Jon's mother is Lyanna. She is now a statue in the crypt, so she's made of stone too. And Lyanna is a parallel to Sarah Snow. So yeah, there's some parallels there. And then Jon Con wears a wolf pelt, just like Ned. So foster dad is kind of humorless guy with a wolf pelt.
Yeah. And also Sarah is like, when you spell it like that, Serra, it's a reference to a very specific type of angel.
Oh, the seraphim.
Yeah.
What's the reference? What do we know about seraphim?
Oh, it's like they're warrior angels. So they're specifically the ones who fight. So there are, other angels. There are like angels of music and blah, blah, blah. Actually, Lucifer is usually characterized as the angel of music with his harp.
True.
So yeah, it's an interesting take there with Sarah being, a warrior of light and, an angel, a winged, perfect being thing. And then Blackfyre, it's very classic George inversion there.
If you could choose any Westerosi lord to wine, dine, and entertain, who would you choose? Besides Wyman Manderley, obviously, that's the easy pick. Frey's excluded for obvious reasons. Yeah, man, how are you going to pick anybody but Wyman Manderley?
I wouldn't, because that dude's gonna feed me nothing but eels, man. I don't want to get anywhere near that. Like, I trust him, his portion size. I'm a big eater, but I don't trust anything else.
It's the most fun we've ever had at a feast in Westeros.
Oh man, I don't trust the people in Westeros anyway. These people eat pies that they had a bunch of birds in, just shitting. Like,
Yeah, there's some logistical issues with that.
These people scare me, and I don't think any of them have been through a food safety course. Like, none of these people, these kitchens are not approved.
What's the water treatment facilities like in King's Landing? Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going over to the Fossaways, New Barrel, and I'm just gonna have some cider and apple pie that no birds are in.
Aemon preserved in rum en route to Meereen for resurrection to help Dany. No, he's not going to Meereen. He's going to Old Town. What are we? Oh, you're saying if Marwyn caught the ship and they never unloaded him? No, I don't think Aemon's getting. You can't resurrect a 100-year-old dude that's been pickled in rum. I don't see that coming.
That would be just like the least effective white ever. Just like, oh yeah, he's the Walking Dead. He can kind of walk. But yeah, it's no, it's not happening. That's funny though. But I mean, come on, he's a maester. He made it all the way to Old Town. They're gonna bury him in Old Town.
Yeah, I would just bury the whole cask. Just don't even open that thing.
You don't think it'll like smell issues or?
On that note, folks. No, I guess that wouldn't be. That's the whole point of putting it in wine, so it doesn't smell it. It preserves it, kind of. I don't know. You'd look like a raisin or something, like a prune.
You might have already. Oh wait,
right,
is that confirmation that you're raising him?
Oh, stop. This is expired. All right, guys, I'm gonna go take care of my birds. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone who sent in questions. And I will post that new Discord link. Just give me like 10 minutes after the stream here. But yeah, I will post that. And I will see you with Why is Dany Half Blackwood this week? About 45-minute video. Got some new stuff coming at you. And then we'll see you next Sunday to talk about even crazier stuff that didn't fit in the video. And then, Sean, what have you got coming out this week again?
I've got the basically just explaining Arthurian lore. It's coming out Wednesday. I'll come up with a good name between now and then, which I've waited way too long to do. But
Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8
p.m. Eastern. Yep.
8 p.m. Eastern. Okay, very good. Mm-hmm. All right, y'all. Cheers.